2022 at 5 p.m. Board member Ossendorf, the chair, is not with us this evening, so I will be, as vice chair, will be running the meeting tonight. And board member Buck is attending remotely. All other board members are present here in person. With that, we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. We got two items on here for the meeting tonight: Superintendent Research Resources and GCED staffing and shared positions. And then we'll also see if there's other topics after that. We'll start here with the superintendent's search resources with Craig Morris. I believe Holly Tower reached out to him, and I've known Craig ever since school, and we'll just let Craig take it from here. Welcome. Thank you for being here.
Good evening, Acting Chair Dirks, board members, directors, members of the public. Thank you for this opportunity. I mean that sincerely. For those of you that I've had contact with over the last several years, this should not come as any surprise that I care deeply about this district. Foundationally, it was critically important to me as a product of Red Wing Schools. It was important to my family. My father served on the school board. My mother worked in the IMC back when there was an IMC at the old Central. And based on my career path and trajectory over the last 20 years, what's happening in P12 is critically important, not just to me, but to this country. I know the work that you do sometimes goes without a lot of praise. In fact, I know you're not here because you're expecting that. But what you do is absolutely essential in terms of transforming people's lives and providing students with a critical need for high quality education in this country, so that we can see our society and our communities grow and thrive and be sustainable. I've provided you too much background about me. You can read about that in the slides or the ancillary materials you were provided with. What I'm really here to talk about is you. This is not about me. It's about the hard work that you do and that you've been doing, and it's about the future of this district. I'm happy to entertain questions. I'd like to run through the slide deck. Please feel free to stop me at any point if there's something that's unclear. Director Bryant and I want to acknowledge fully there is a typo on one of the slides regarding the years in my timeline proposal. I apologize for that. Let's go ahead and we'll get into it. So if we could advance to slide number 2, please. I'm hoping tonight we can talk about what the current environment looks like. I spent the last several days, although I've been watching for many, many months, your school board meetings on YouTube. You have some options, you have some choices. You, as a district, are actually in pretty good shape. And I'll talk more about why I make that statement to you. It's not to be patronizing, but as a person who, let's see, over the last 8 years, have been involved in over 24 superintendent searches across the country. I can tell you that there are many, many districts that wish they could be where Red Wing is today, whether you believe that or not. And I'll talk more about that later. You have some challenges, and especially these days, there are challenges to recruitment, not just at the superintendent level. There are challenges in terms of people who are willing to be in the seats that you are in as board members. There are challenges around personnel. No deep, dark secret. The era of the Great Resignation has not left education untouched. You know this. COVID and post-COVID, the true impact of that is still yet to be realized. We are just now beginning to have some sense of what post-COVID might look like, but we really don't know what the long-term implications are. And I'm not talking about from the context of individual health. I'm talking about the impact on education and students in this country. Curriculum, co-curriculum, activities, How do you engage? How do you address test scores? How do you address declining enrollment? Look at the options out there for people to pursue knowledge through other means. And for the first time in the history of this country, in fact, of any industrial civilized society, at least in terms of my understanding of history, there are people questioning the value of not just higher ed, but of higher education in total. In fact, just today there was an article in Chronicle of Higher Ed raising that very issue. So those are some of the things that are facing us. Now, we do need to talk about our options, and you do have options. I also want to talk about equity processes that you may want to consider, and then talk more specifically about a timeline and proposal about how you might proceed. I am not here to make the decision nor influence your decision. I am here to provide you with best practice, knowledge, my experience, and to help you make the decisions that you are elected or appointed to make. Next slide, please. Full transparency. I care and concern about each of you and this district. I have for actually over 25 years. I know that there have been some conversations with the MSBA. In fact, I hold Barb Dorn in the utmost respect and regard for her professionalism and the work that she does. I reached out to Barb and the board, actually the association, several months ago. While I've been involved and engaged in this work, working for another agency, the conversation started off with, I think MSBA can do it better. And I'd like to talk about how I think you can do it better. And she was kind enough and gracious enough to allow me to speak to the senior leadership down in St. Peter. And we've had some really fruitful conversations about how that organization might think about its work. And in fact, there is a proposal going forward, in fact, today. I've availed myself, and I hope that the Minneapolis School Board will see fit, but I'm hoping to collaborate with MSBA on a proposal for Minneapolis schools as they go forward with their search for their next superintendent. But foundationally, I have learned, and I absolutely believe that education is the element that transforms people's lives. The work that you do does not receive the recognition that it should. What you do in terms of policy, practice, what you establish in terms of goals and objectives, your mission and vision absolutely is about people's lives. You impact students far, far greater than higher ed does. Now, my boss and the chancellor at Minn State, and I'm sure other previous presidents I've worked for would challenge that. In fact, they probably wouldn't be happy with me saying that. It's not a diss against higher ed, but the reality is foundational to anyone who progresses, whether it's to a technical career education or an academic BA onto graduate degrees, what you do affects people's ability to pursue those other avenues and future academic careers. My grandmother, who was raised in the South as a young woman when I was growing up with her in inner city St. Paul back in the day, used to always talk about, as a kid walking around, because we didn't have a car, she'd always talk to me about the importance of education, the importance of being a servant leader, the importance of holding a public office, the importance of doing good for other people. I never understood that as a kid, okay? I never understood. Why was she talking to me about that? We walk around all over. She would walk for miles and did so up until even the later years of her life. It wasn't until just a few years ago I realized what she was really saying to me and how she influenced my life. Because as a young Black woman growing up in the South, when she was growing up, she couldn't run for public office. She couldn't hold certain positions. She really was discouraged from going on and continuing her education. So I'm very grateful to you for the work that this district, and the work that I hope that we can accomplish together in the months ahead. If we could move on. So yes, I attended school here, lived here, still have relatives here. My wife and I are back frequently. I try to stay in contact. I've had the good fortune of transitioning from the private sector to the public sector in terms of higher ed, really since about 2008. I have been engaged in superintendent searches across the country since 2014. But my background has always engaged some aspect of employment, personnel, labor relations, DE&I. Next slide, please. If we can pass this one. The only thing noteworthy about slide 5 is just some anecdotal information I want to bring forward from a couple of searches just concluded recently. One earlier this year in a district down in Kansas called Park Hill, which is right next to Kansas City. Some things and lessons learned from that search that I think might be applicable here. And then also just recently the Pine City search up in mid-state Minnesota, and their superintendent search in which they hired a person from within the district. Next slide, please. Everything I've read, no deep dark secret, Red Wing is growing and burgeoning. Growth has slowed somewhat, but about 16,000, 2,500 students. And from what I can tell, even in terms of the publicly available information, the diversity count in this district is somewhat, I would say, elusive and variable. Now, that's not a diss, but when I look at differing sources of information, test data, other census population information, the numbers don't necessarily correlate. So the diversity question is one that's rich. This community has changed significantly over the last 24, 25 years in terms of the diversity composition. That's not a bad thing. This is not a political statement. We need to talk about that. We need to talk about that in terms of your mission and vision. We need to talk about it in terms of goals for the next superintendent. We need to talk about it in terms of curriculum and co-curriculum. We need to talk about the equity of serving all students well, which you've all committed to, at least in terms of what you've produced and what you've published publicly. So we should talk about that. You are facing what every other district in this country is facing: declining enrollment, test score challenges, this board uncomfortableness. These are not easy times. You've had lots of debate and discussion about a common and consistent vision. What are you all looking for? What are you seeking? What are you trying to achieve in the interest of students in this district? And sometimes you've had lively discourse about that, and that's good and that's healthy. But how do we turn that discourse into action? And quite candidly, it's important that boards be bold, but also be decisive and be committed to action. You can't wait. I would suggest that as you think about the future, that you pay more attention to telling your story. You have a really positive story in this district. You do. And sometimes I don't think you take credit for the hard work and what you've been able to accomplish. When you look at where this district is today and you think about the challenges over the last, not just 5 years, but the last 5, 10, 15 years, what you've been through, what you have in terms of positives in this district. Again, there are many districts across the country. I can tell you there are boards that wish they could be where you are today. And I'll talk more about that in just a moment. The work is difficult, it's challenging, and it's stressful. No deep, dark secret. Shouldn't be a surprise to any of you. It's hard. It's very hard. And so I encourage people to make sure that you're practicing self-care. You have to take care of you in order to do this well, in order to serve all others well, and especially your students. Next slide, please. So, I want you to think about the future for just a moment. We're not going to get into, I promise you, we're not going to have a group hug and sing Kumbaya and do all this visioning and close your eyes. I'm not making fun of that. But I want you to think about the future. Truly, what should this district look like 5 years from now? What do you want it to look like? What are the points of pride? Are those points of pride the same for the district as for the community, or do they differ? What are the challenges that you will face? How would you rate your own efficacy as a board? What are the attributes, skills, and competencies needed in your next leader? And I want to be careful here. Frank, everything I hear about you is amazing. Not trying to be patronizing. You have stepped in at a time that, quite frankly, other people are leaving. They're getting out of this business. You've stepped in. You've been asked to come in and take on a huge task, and it's difficult being an interim. It's extremely difficult being an interim or an incumbent even, because sometimes doing the things that you're asked to do can create enemies. You're sometimes at a disadvantage as compared to other candidates who are not well known by the district, because sometimes those things can be used against you. And sometimes interims have to have their foot on the brake and the gas at the same time. And that's not really a good thing for automobiles. It's not a good thing for people either. Next slide, please. I don't need to remind you about this, but your own vision and mission talk about what you will strive to provide. How do we turn strive into will? How about fosters curiosity? What does that mean? What about best practice? What benchmarking have you done? How do you know? Have you really engaged all students? Have you connected with all the community partners? Your mission statement talks about inspiration of all students. I'm not asking you to change these. I'm just asking you to look at it through the lens of, what if you were not on this board? How would you view these things? How would you measure and evaluate how well you're doing? Because I'll guarantee you there's someone out there that's asking those questions, whether they've come before you or not. And the reason I raise these is because they're going to be critically important for you to examine and to be able to answer and address, especially if you're going to ask Frank to continue on, or if you're going to conduct a search for another superintendent to serve this district. You should have answers to those questions, and you should be prepared to explain and articulate those things to anyone who is going to fulfill this role, meaning the superintendent's role. Next slide, please.
Good question.
Yes, sir.
How are you? Thank you for coming here today. Anybody know when the last time board looked at the mission statement? His question was there and he didn't ask it. Just ask it. You don't have?
We went through a whole strategic process about 5 years ago.
It was just finalized just prior to the referendum 4 years ago. So it was about, I think it was I'm going to call it a 2-year process. It's probably longer, but a 2-year process that ended about 4.5 years ago.
Okay, I didn't know.
And we did a lot of work with the community at that point. We did a lot of listening and focus groups and
I'm just asking how long
Stakeholders, yeah.
it was.
Yeah.
Because some people, some groups, organizations, they'll look at it right away. They let it sit there for some time. 4 or 5 years is not overly long ago.
Right.
If you look at it. So.
Director Bryant, you raise a great point. Think about where you were 5 years ago. You have strengths. You have strong community support for education in this community. There's just no doubt about it. It is there. You've demonstrated referendum support. Some districts are still challenged by that, right? Because they aren't as successful as you have been. You have a strong philanthropic community. No doubt about that. And we'll talk about the recent commitment by the Jones Foundation and the importance of that. You have Southeast Technical. I'm not saying that because I've worked with Min-State, but you have a key asset right here in your backyard. Many communities don't have that opportunity. You have strong infrastructure. You're building infrastructure. When I look at the capitalization and what you've done in terms of improvements and what you have available to you, you really are in pretty good shape. You're positioned well for the future. I've seen it in writing, and I'm hoping to see that because I'm kind of a data geek, that your equity mindedness is paying off. You have strong community ed programming. And again, not to be patronizing because of anyone who's in the room or might be viewing, but that's really key to the connectedness with the community, to have a strong community ed program. And yes, I'm going to talk about the Prairie Island community, and I'm not saying this because Nikki is on your board. That's a key asset. That's a key asset in terms of your curriculum, co-curricular activities, community ed, being able to garner the knowledge and depth of the culture that is different from many of yours, and how you can infuse that into the educational opportunity in this district. And I'm not talking about the financial wherewithal of the tribal community to provide you with assets. That's not where this is coming from. It's about the educational learning and opportunity that you can have here, that you can provide to your students as you think about preparing them for the workforce of the future and honoring those that have been here in the past. Next, please. You have a couple of search options, and I want to talk about those with you because I think that there is some pressure, at least from what I've seen, to do one thing or another. And I think it's good that you take a bit of a pause and consider what those options are and how you really want to, how you want to see this play out. You don't have to rush anything. Frank, I apologize. I know you have a contract. I know there's a date certain and all that good stuff. You could do nothing. I don't think that's really an option for you, though, because Frank's contract does have a date on it. So you're going to have to do something. You can engage a search firm, but if you're going to do that, and if you're really looking to begin a search that's going to take effect in 2023, you need to do that like 2 months ago. And it's almost late in the game because what I have seen, and you'll see a timeline here, this is prime season. This is about the time that search firms really fire up and they start posting and they start promoting districts that are looking. And they start working with boards to get that process started so that you can be in a place next February or March to bring forward candidates if you so choose, and to have a decision made hopefully by May 1 as to who your next superintendent will be. You could defer your decision until 2023, but that will require a contract extension. Now, I've read through, and as I understand it, this is not something I want to get deep into, but when I looked at the date in your contract, there's two schools of thought. You have one contract that apparently has been offered that will have some impact or effect this December, and then the publicly available contract talks about June 30th of 2023. So that needs to be reconciled. And I say that in all honesty and fairness to Frank and to this board, that if there's a misunderstanding or if there's a lack of clarity around the contract terms, you need to address that soon. Next slide, please. So you have a couple of options in terms of the scope of working with a firm or an individual, or even if the board wants to take this on. You don't have to conduct a search. You can appoint Frank, whether you do that in December or June or sometime later in 23, that's up to you. You don't have to conduct a search, but if you don't conduct a search, you won't know that you have the best possible candidate in the district. That's not a reflection on Frank. I'm talking about the position, not the person. You might decide Frank's doing a great job for us and we want to keep him on. That's okay too. Sometimes even an interim or an incumbent, if they go through a search, it makes them stronger because you've at least looked at what's out there and you have solidified with the community what you're looking for in terms of a superintendent. And remember, there is a bit of a pact here. The life cycle for superintendents is dropping dramatically. You don't see 10, 15, 20-year, sometimes it's hard to even see 3-year or 2-term superintendents because usually they're in for a period of 2 or 3 years. Wisconsin, it's a little bit different, but even Wisconsin is starting to see that life cycle, right? It's shorter and shorter. So today in the world of searches and recruitment, if you can keep someone for 5 years, even 7 years, you're doing really, really well. But that is becoming less and less the norm. There are lots of firms out there, but searches, especially national searches, are becoming much more costly. And I would say there's a bit of a diminishing rate of return. And I'm saying that as a person who's participated in a firm and has conducted national searches. Pre-COVID, it wasn't unusual for a community of this size to maybe see 35, 40 applicants. You know, you might laugh at that, but that's not unheard of. Today, a community of this size, given the attributes of this district, again, during COVID and post-COVID, maybe 20, maybe 15. It takes a lot more to either unseat or cause people to move in this environment than it did 4 or 5 years ago. And you really have to offer about a 15 or 20% increase over what the person is making now, just for them to think about moving. Especially if that move involves more than 200 miles. It's really hard. There are lots of organizations out there that do this work. I'm not here to suggest or in any way reflect poorly on any of them. I mean, you can go out and do a Google search. They're out there. There are national organizations that do this. But you also have MSBA right in your own backyard. They all, I will tell you this, really employ about the same cadre of sourcing resources in terms of media organizations they connect with, associations or affiliations that they will post and recruit positions for. So there's not really a distinct advantage in terms of who you go with, in terms of where they're going to post and promote these opportunities. In fact, you as a board, really working with a consultant, should have discussion about that. There are organizations that you may want to think about that in the past you haven't used. You want to look at what's the efficacy of going with this person or this group or this organization in terms of what's the return on our investment going to be. You do want to find a firm that you're comfortable with, that's going to understand your district, that understands Minnesota law, and will understand the Red Wing community. That is really important. You want to find someone that has a positive reputation for placement. And again, I would ask them for their track record. What's your hiring rate? What's your retention? What are you seeing in terms of how long your placements last? Ideally, you want to see the majority of those being in that 3 to 5 range. You want to have strong community engagement as the key element for any search. You really need to do that work ahead of time, and you also need to make sure that you're taking the time as a board to prepare yourselves to conduct a thorough search. That preparatory work really needs to be in advance of the search. Now, you can do it concurrent to the search, and I'm happy to tell you that I did some of this just recently with Pine City. Because of some challenges, and no deep dark secret, they had challenges in terms of keeping their superintendent. They had lots of board turnover. There were significant conversations and differences of opinion in that community about what the future of the district should look like, where they were going and how they were going to get there. I will not conduct a search unless I feel the board is reasonably aligned, that there's some correlation of thought around what you're looking for and how you want to proceed. It's just really important. It's also costly if you don't do that work ahead of the search, because it's not likely you'll retain, even if you can bring in a good person, it's hard on that individual to work with boards where there's lots of disagreement.
Can you expand a little bit about when you say board preparation? I know you just said, what are we looking for and how do we proceed? But, I think the community engagement piece is going to answer some of that for us too, in terms of focus groups. And I think the community needs to weigh in on what we collectively as a community are looking for in a district leader. But what else should we be doing to kind of prepare and decide where to go from here?
So one of the things I like to do with boards, and I've already given you a preview of some of those questions, were the questions that I asked previously about what's your view, what's your vision, what do you see? And not just in terms of the tactical issues you're addressing on a month-to-month basis, but looking forward to the next 5 years. And you don't have to agree. Like I said, this is not about group hug and singing Kumbaya, but having that out there on the table, having that discussion, and even understanding different points of view on that is going to be healthy, especially as you go into the search. Because you're the people who are going to hire the next superintendent, not the people that elected you to these positions. You will. And let me also be clear about any search firm or any organization you decide to work with. They have to understand that as well. It's not their search, it is your search. So you have to own it, which means you have to be, as a board, really together on what you're looking for, what's going to be important for you. What are the attributes or examples, evidence that a person has the things you're looking for in terms of your next leader? What's going to be important for your employees and your students? You talked about the previous community engagement, and Director Rowe, I'm very familiar with that, and I applaud you for that. As we talked about the last time you looked at your mission and vision was some 4 years ago, soon to be 5. Does that still hold true? Now, if you believe it does, then you don't need to go through that work. If things have changed, it might be in your interest to think about how you would do that. It might be bringing it forward and just asking the community to reaffirm, are these things still correct? Are they still relevant? Is this what's important to you? I can't answer that. You have to as a board. And all I'm saying is having that preparatory work, or at least that affirmation up front, is going to help you when it comes to the search, and help you when it comes to that night that we all wait for, when you're sitting there with a slate of 3 or 5 candidates, and we're sitting around the table and having deliberations about who you want as that next leader. Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for the question.
Great.
Yes, sir.
On search firms, piggyback a little bit, Pam said, so the search firm must put out a request for applicants, however that is.
Yes.
They must come to them.
Yes.
Do boards, and have boards that you've seen, go through them prior to picking them out, or does the search firm bring forward X number of applicants, or both?
Thank you for that question, Director Bryant. What I think is a best practice as a part of your RFP process is that you make it clear, while you may ask the search firm to help sort, you as a board, in the spirit of transparency, would like to have access to all of the applicant materials.
That makes sense.
Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
I didn't know, we talked to search firms, I just wanted to be, because I'm sure that we're all thinking different ways to do it. So nice funneled way to do it.
I think it helps in 2 ways. Number one, it gives you full transparency that the firm has done what you've asked them to do. It's helpful, right, to have them provide you with their recommendations. But I also think it's extremely helpful, again, in terms of your own accountability as a board to the public, that you have had access to all of the applicants' materials.
Thank you.
Now, I do want to talk about that. There's a slide I want to bring forward here in just a little bit. So thank you for the question. Next slide, please. And I want to make sure that I'm modulating your time appropriately, because I know you have another topic. Are we okay in terms of pace?
Well, we're over time, but we want to hear you.
This is important.
I'll make sure that we,
I don't know for overtime, I feel like it's time.
Well,
Yeah, we have to do this.
Yeah, like I wouldn't say it's overtime, Mr. Morris.
I'll do my best to move through these last few slides. I promise. We won't go through all of them. I also think it's important that the firm have a commitment to equity and diversity. And let me be clear about something here. The firm itself should have a statement or commitment and have some evidence that it is able to do this in a way that serves your interest, but also in terms of their own practice as a search organization. I want to be clear about something else. When I talk about diversity and equity, and this is not a political statement, I promise you, whether you believe in these concepts or principles or not, when I talk about it, the context I'm talking about, equity and diversity, is in the broadest sense possible, that you want a variety of backgrounds, experiences, competencies, skills, knowledge, and abilities. It is not about color. Let me be clear about this. It is not about color. The Eighth Circuit, in fact, not only once but twice has affirmed that affirmative action applies equal protection under the law. So regardless of what your identity might be, you get it. You get that protection. Now, there's a caveat here. As you all know, there is some controversy in terms of applicability of the law unfortunately, with regard to members of the LGBTQ plus IA communities. It's a state-by-state issue, and I'm not going to get into that right now. That's something that you want to talk about with legal counsel. I'm not here to provide you with legal counsel. I'm just saying, right, that that's out there. The other thing that I try to do, at least, and I'll give you a snippet of this, some work that I did with Pine City, St. Paul Schools, Lakeville, and a couple of others in the state, is I've tried to employ practices from what's called the Women in Science, Engineering, Education Leadership Institute, which is the long word, WISELY for short, out of UW-Madison. They actually have some national best practices that I try to bake into my presentation when I talk with boards as you're thinking about and within the context of diversity to make sure that your search really is able to have full participation and really is open and inclusive. And again, I'm using inclusion in the broadest sense applicable to everyone in this room. Thank you. Next slide. We can flip through these, but I'm giving you this because this is actually part of the presentation I put on for boards. So this is a sample of what I would do with this group or what I hope others would do. So we can flip through slides 13, 14, 15, but this is part of the workshop that I host and have hosted with a number of groups, including the Park Hill group. Why use structured interviews? This is just to help you as you think about your role, because again, these searches, it's your search. You should be conducting the search. The search organization or consultant is there to provide a framework, help guide you through the steps, and make sure they provide you with the resources to do this successfully. Next slide, please. And I apologize for going through this quickly, but in the interest of time, you can read these on your own. And I'm giving this to you. You can use this, whoever you decide to work with, or if you decide just to appoint Frank, you can have this.
Thank you.
Please continue on with the slides. Yes.
Can I ask, do
Craig, please.
firms help us provide or pick out interview questions, or is that something that we as a board have to come up with?
Your search consultant should help you. They're your questions, don't get me wrong here, but there's certain questions you should be asking and there's some that you shouldn't ask. So part of the role of the search firm should help you, but the base questions should come from you. Next slide, please. Keep going. I promise we're going to wrap this, open up for Q&A in the next 5 minutes. Keep going. 1920. Sorry. Oh, yeah, stay on 20 for a moment. For those of you that I don't know, and this is personal experience, I make light of this, but it's absolute fact. Please, if you ever do a Google search, be very, very careful. I'm going to talk about me for a minute. At one time, there were 3 Elmers in my family. When I grew up in Red Wing, there was lots of confusion about me and my dad and my other brother, Ray. No. But there is a person by the name of Craig Morris in the northern western suburbs of the Twin Cities who absolutely has a very nefarious background, a criminal background, criminal record, and one of his wives actually has the same first name as my spouse. Now, if you don't think that created problems and confusion and had my spouse questioning me at one point in time, that actually happened to me. So I go by E. Craig Morris, but if you Google my name, I beg you, please be careful of that. And I have to put that out there now because I know people go out and look for stuff. Today you do it, but please be careful about when you're looking at applicant information, because you have to really understand that there are many, many ways that things can be conflated. Misinformation can occur, and sometimes even identity, even though you think it's a reputable source, the identity of that source may come into question and may do harm to a potentially really good candidate. So no more commercials. Next slide, please. How you might proceed. Okay, let's get into this. So you have midterm elections coming up, and there's no deep, dark secret that may impact some of you on this board. It will certainly potentially impact the decision-making you're going to be asked to make here in the next few months. You have a current interim whose contract will end, whether it's December or June or whenever. But the timing of when to begin a search should be evaluated very carefully. you should be discussing your view of community engagement as a part of that next search process if you decide to engage in another search. And you have a strong community ed program and partners that I think would be willing to work with you. And I would hope your consultant would also work to put that program together for you so that you can see how that might play out. Again, whether you might decide you've got relevant historical information, you don't need to do that. I mean, no disrespect about the prior work. You may want to go through a step that even just affirms what you had 5 years ago is still relevant and current today. Or you might decide it's important, we need to take another look at this, okay? Because things have changed perhaps. Those are choices you get to make. But you do want to have a strong engagement program as a part of any search. It's just really important from the sake of transparency, from the sake of integrity, and also in the sense that, when you do this, you're really saying to the community, it's important to you, it's important to us. And we're going to be transparent about this. So we want you to be a part of this process. Some of the most robust community engagement searches I've been involved with, one was several years ago now. In fact, 7 was the St. Paul search that resulted in Dr. Goddard being brought over to St. Paul. Also very extensive when we conducted the Park Hill search down in Kansas City just earlier this year. We went through probably 3 days of community engagement just on the front end of the search. Pine City, we had 2 days, upwards of 12 or 13 meetings a day with all stakeholders from throughout the community. And we used a hybrid approach. We had on campus, in person, and then we had online opportunities as well, and promoted that in different languages and with different community organizations. Again, I want to leave you with this, and that is select a consultant that knows you and has proximity to the community, and that will be accountable to you after the search is over. I think it's important that the search organization do some post-hire work. Come back and interview you, survey you, interview the person you select, and to do some work both with the board and that person to make sure that things are working well, expectations are being met, and that you're on a path for success. I don't think search firms should just be able to do their work, come into town, do their work, drop the person off at the door. I'm not trying to be dismissive or disrespectful here and then leave town and not have any accountability. That's not fair to you nor to the person you select. Next slide, please. This is where, and thank you again, Director Bryant. I apologize for the typo in terms of the year. On page 22, the commit to a board workshop, I think that has to happen soon. And you're starting that tonight about how to conduct a search, and that's really healthy. I think it's important that you also create an assessment and an evaluation of your current interim. Just in all fairness to Frank, I don't believe that's in place. I think you've had discussion on it. If I may, and I realize there's some risk in me saying this, but I had some conversation with Frank prior to our meeting tonight, and I'm glad that I did. Thank you, Frank, for taking my call. But Frank is basically doing this work out of the goodness of his heart, even though you have him on contract, but he doesn't really have what is that evaluation that you're going to provide to me, whether it's next month or 2 months or 3 months down the road. And I think it's really hard to assess fully the person's work in such a short period of time, right? Mm-hmm. Because anything that Frank has been able to do, he's just getting started with it. So are you really going to evaluate him on that now? I just plead with you, and he did not ask me to say this, and I said this wasn't going to be about him, but I'm just saying Frank might be the best superintendent you're going to find in the next 5 years. You don't want to lose him because he's going to have to make some choices here as well, right? Remember that foot on the brake and the gas thing? So in fairness to the interim and incumbent, I would just caution you about especially anything that involves heavy lifting, right? Large-scale projects or objectives, 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 months, that is not enough time. Okay, no more commercials. You really do want to get on with issuing your RFP probably in the fall of next year. You want to make sure that you make a decision about selecting your search firm or consultant in the fall of next year. You can do it sooner than fall, but fall, meaning around August, September, you can do it and engage the firm, but then you want to get on with that search probably no later than October of next year. So about this time next year is when you've selected where you're going to post, what organizations you're going to try to recruit from, making sure that you meet publication dates, for example, for any journals or publications within the superintendent community that you want to get your message to, so that you can have people start to apply and to have those back for your review really early in 24. Pardon me, 24. Because what you're really talking about at this point, while you could offer a new contract in December of this year or June of next year, the likelihood of your being able to initiate a search and having a full search for 2023 is not likely at this point. You would be late in the game, and you probably wouldn't see quality candidates coming forward if you're late in the game, because most of those individuals are going to put their name out there if they're thinking about leaving and try to have something locked in, usually in the February, March, April timeframe. Because remember, you're going to want to have another contract for 7/1 of 23, which means you really need to look at 23 as your search year moving into 24 for 7/1 24. Does that help? Mm-hmm. Or am I making mush out of that? So I promise I'm going to redo the slide. Jim, thank you for bringing forward the typos. I realize that's confusing. But what I'm really suggesting is that you may want to focus on your preparatory work, meaning the community engagement and your own board preparation, thinking about this in terms of you really want that person named before or for 7/1 of 24. And if you reverse engineer that or work it backwards, that's why I'm saying it's going to be difficult for 23, realistically look at 24.
Is there, I think we as a board, if we decide to go that route, we're not saying we're, but I think we were leaning towards December making that decision for 2023 and going forward, if we made that decision to keep it. So this is.
You could, but you're going to have a lot of concurrent activities.
Yeah. How did, if I may, I just know of some area schools, I'll talk area,
Mhm.
Big 9.
Sure.
That conducted interviews 2022. Curious when they started their process, if you're aware at all. Faribault.
Right. I presented at Faribault.
Okay.
They started last year.
Last 2021.
Well, they started having conversations in 21.
When did they?
They posted and received proposals earlier this year, but it was late.
Yeah.
And I know that you had, well, Karsten had applied, and
That had zero. I just know, checking news and seeing news, which I'm a big news guy. I just know that they went through some searches. They had
Right.
selected and all that. So.
where you're at as a board right now, if I may say it this way, I would not recommend that you move forward with a search with the intent that you have a candidate identified and selected for 7/1 of 23. It is going to be difficult. You have midterm elections coming up. And that's like, I'm kind of a science geek. So it's like the missile that they shot at that
Sure.
asteroid, right?
Mhm.
It didn't blow the thing up, and it didn't throw it way off course. It deflected it a little bit, right? So mid-course elections aren't going to throw you off course, but it may deflect how you're going to approach the search and what you as a board think you're looking for. So again, that community engagement piece, the board preparatory work, I just think that's really fundamental and important. Plus, you're going to want to spend some time issuing an RFP looking at search firms if you decide to go that route.
Okay.
It's going to be hard for you to really proceed effectively and then to be able to make those decisions, even looking at next July at this point.
Let me finish up.
No,
We asked you to come down, greatly appreciate it, so we'll take I think we should take your information and discuss it and go forward. But I appreciate it. I mean, I just want to let you know, I think news to us that we're going to look at pushing it out 6 months to start the process or more, which I totally understand. A new rationale board could be 3 new members, could be two members or 1, whatever that makeup be. If the person's going to be there, I get the idea they should be involved in decision-making during their time on, because this person would be on the board for report part of their term.
Yes. And in all fairness to whoever the superintendent is, whether they're interim or permanent, I think it's important that the new board is on board and that there's some coalescing of thought as you move forward with that search and making those determinations.
So let me follow one more. You raised great questions, Greg, so thank you. Must be that education from Red Wing. And you hit on it earlier on, and we've talked about it too, about the evaluation process of Frank. We just, in December, let's just go forward. Let's just hypothetically say, Frank's the person. We're gonna forego the blah, 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 the advertising, all that, go forward versus the other way.
Yes.
So you bring us a lot to think about because we want to evaluate Frank, but we can't, the goals we set are some big ones that are going to be nearly impossible to evaluate or judge or include, but there are some that pieces of it that we can look at and discuss. So thank you for a lot of conversation here, a lot of questions.
Holly, go ahead.
I'm extremely pleased with the information you brought forward. A lot of it I didn't know. And that's what I've been searching for, is trying to understand not just one entity's approach, but a multiple entity approach to how we go about securing leadership for Red Wing Public Schools, and what does that look like, and how do we as a group work towards that process collectively.
Sure.
I have not been able to rectify in my own mind how to get this done by December, let alone January. Where there's a will, there's a way, but sometimes that will has to be stopped and there has to be a lot more learning and educating and time for reflection, which I think is what you're bringing with your 2 years of 2023 work.
Yes.
But I was that's been my hardest part about this, is putting Frank into a box that he has to secure and lock down before we decide if he's the guy or not the guy. That feels extremely disrespectful and extremely quick. But yet I didn't see another trajectory for us to move, because sometimes when we get to this place on a Monday night, we've thought about it a lot during the week and then we forget what we thought about, or somebody brings up a point and then we're like, oh, I didn't think of that. This has been extremely beneficial for me, and I really thank you for coming in free of charge. When I did mention it that night, it just speaks to the care that you have for the community and the passion that you have for Red Wing and a place that you called home.
Thank you. Thank you, Director Tower. I very much appreciate that.
Because Frank, I don't know what this looks like, and I do feel like it's being disrespectful to you. To put you in this box and say, check, 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 and then we move forward. But I think that's something that the board, we have to discuss how we want to move forward. Because if anybody were to come in and look at how Red Wing Public Schools treated the interim superintendent, they might go, whoa. How are we fair? How are we respectful? How are we being equitable and really embracing the process? So
Remember, if I may say that, I'm going to close. You're actually in a good shape. You're in a good position. You have, if I may say this, Frank, you have an effective leader in place right now. Granted, you haven't evaluated, you haven't established decision-making criteria, et cetera. You have a person at least in place right now. I think it would be important for you to slow the roll a little bit. Think about what I've shared with you this evening and how you want to move forward. All I've done is given you options. I'm not trying to interfere with your decision. Again, Director Bryant, if you want to proceed, proceed. But if you think that it might be helpful or beneficial to let some things play out, look at what your options are, reaffirm the information that was either gathered or if it needs to be updated. Think about the new board and how you might want to address what it is you're going to be looking for. And keep in mind that regardless of what your decision might be, any future potential candidate is going to do exactly what I've been doing, which is watching the last 6 months or 8 months of YouTube and deciding, is that a place I want to pursue? Is that the district that I think I see myself in? Can I bring my best skills and background to the Red Wing district? Do I fit there, right? In terms of what their needs are. So again, I would encourage you to keep doing what you're doing. Keep an open mind. Realize that you're actually in a good position to attract, whether you retain Frank or he goes through a search or you decide to appoint Frank to the permanent position, which you might decide to do. All those things are your options. You're in control of this. And I would encourage you not to feel pressured to move more quickly than you should, keeping in mind that you do have a contract or contracts with dates. So you want to think about that, right, in terms of being open and transparent and fair to Frank.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just thinking about the educational planner that we have hired as well and how that falls into this. And it makes a lot of sense to me what you're saying about maybe putting this, moving forward in a different way so that we can work with the educational planner too,
Yes.
to see what we need as a district, not just as a superintendent, but everything else and how that falls together. So this timeline, when I first looked at it, I was very confused, but I appreciate it now as you talked us through it. It makes a lot of sense to me.
And I'll make sure we clean up those dates.
I think we as a board, when our superintendent announced late May that he was leaving, we quickly came to a consensus to do an interim superintendent. MSBA submitted some names, or we selected some, reviewed and come up with Mr. Norton. I think as a group, I could be wrong here, we thought we had 1 year to get this whole process done. I like the idea of putting the brakes on, slowing it down and going forward. So I'm in no hurry to do anything, only because I think we as a group were on the expectation. We had 1 year to get it done. So good news to hear. I like that. I like that approach.
Well, you do have some time constraints again in terms of your contract. Are there other options? And could you do a midsummer search? Sure. You're probably not going to get the best candidates because it would mean someone who was not on contract. You don't want to delay things too long here. And I think it's also important that you come up with sort of a plan A and plan B. So as a contingency. And God, heaven forbid, something should happen to Frank. Now what are you going to do? Right? Or Frank decides, wow, I really like this, but there's another opportunity over here.
There's a lot there to follow on the contract with Frank and his needs. So.
I just have one more question that Pam and I keep going back and forth around is the legality of appointing somebody versus going through the complete hiring process. And I say you and I, because we keep bringing it up and can a board just appoint somebody to be the superintendent legally?
You actually have a lot of power and latitude in terms of how you go about making your decision. You would be better having an open and transparent search. even if you have the best person out there, because ultimately you want to make sure it stands the test of scrutiny. You're being fair to the incumbent in interim. And the likelihood of the person being retained is much stronger if you do that, for the very reason that you've put them in that position of being in the spotlight, right? You've been open with the public about what you're looking for and how you've evaluated the candidates. Sometimes having an interim or an incumbent can discourage candidates from applying. That happens, right? In fact, quite often candidates will ask, well, I heard there's, is the interim person being considered? Yeah. Now, make a decision, right? It's open. You can apply. You should do that if you're interested. I just think that it does something in terms of the public perception of the board's intent around integrity and scrutiny and being transparent.
I agree, but that answers it. Thank you.
However, with this timeline, like you said, we need to consider Frank's current contract. And so if we decide to go with this timeline, then we need to decide, are we going to ask Frank if he would like to stay another year while we go through this process, extend the interim, right? That's the next thing we as a board have to decide.
And is he willing?
Exactly.
And renegotiate contract, renegotiate the terms of the contract.
Yep.
Is there any, looking at the timeline here and considering, if we wanted to, go with appointing Frank, we might want to move that community engagement piece up to hear that before we want to go that route, even before we would select a firm, if we want to select a firm and go that way, we should. But I guess that's the first piece that we need to do, is decide if we're going to select a firm, but then where does that community engagement piece come in if we choose to appoint? Do you know, Frank? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, I think it's important that we get community feedback regardless of which route we want to take. And I want to make sure that we do that thoughtfully and respectfully.
I think it's really, what Jennifer said with the educational planner, it's my understanding there's a big component with the educational planner in community engagement. And it almost seems like those two should kind of date,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like,
Is that,
this whole process should be inclusive of the educational planner
yes.
and a timeline, and however the planner and we decide to discuss community engagement and what that looks like. Because if I'm understanding correctly, the planner is already developing on how they engage the community. Like, we don't have a say in, well, I think you should do a questionnaire, I think you should do a survey. I think they already do it based on what their
Yes.
firm does.
Yes.
So we can use those results, or we can ask them to specifically go in line of a superintendent question.
Let me leave you with this. Let me just be crystal clear. Based upon what I've heard tonight, based upon all the documents I've read, number one, I would encourage you to extend Frank's contract. If there's something out there about December, and I don't understand that, I don't pretend to, but make sure that you can keep Frank in place through June of next year. That's priority one. Number two, is this new person, are they on board with the district at this time? Okay. There is a way, if you choose, you can forego RFP. You can say, we've decided we want to invite, and let's just say hypothetically, we want to invite a national, a regional, and a local recruiter. We want to hear proposals from MSBA. We want to go with McPherson, and we want to go with a mid-sized firm. Okay, you could just invite them in and say, give us your proposal. You could decide, we're going to go with Minnesota School Board Association, and we want you to start this search in November. you could hypothetically also bring the community engagement piece into that with that consultant to work with your new person around what does that look like during the months of November and December. Now, it's going to be expedited, and you're going to, because holidays always throw a little bit of a wrinkle in there. I have seen this done. In fact, in St. Paul, that did happen. So it was able, and it transpired into January. I'm not saying you couldn't still pull a search off for 2023. You could. And in fact, it may be important, especially if you want to retain Frank, at least through that period, because Frank might say, look, I can't be sitting here wondering what my future is beyond June of 23. That's a conversation you should have with Frank. But I think it's important that you retain Frank through June at least to get you through this period. Now that may be doable, and I don't want to speak for MSMBA, but I think they would be willing to support you in whatever capacity if you decide to go that route. I can't speak for the others, but I believe based upon the work I've done in the past, they would try to meet that need if you said, this is the direction we need to go in. So if you want, you can sort of time compress and bring this into view that you could do this. But I can't read your mind. So if you think that you're in a position where you're willing to spend the time and you think it's important to make sure that this is done for 2023, I don't want to leave you with the impression that you can't do that. You can do that. Are you ready to do that is my question. And I can't answer that for you.
Thank you for all the information, Greg.
I know I went over, I apologize, Mr. Chair.
Well, poor Sherry's waiting over there, but
I know.
we'll get to her.
I can't thank you enough.
Yeah,
Thank you.
very much.
This has really been helpful, Sherry.
I hope so. I feel that it maybe has left you with more questions than answers, and I don't feel good about that.
I
So,
think good questions in a direction versus nebulous questions, and I don't know where to go with this.
Okay.
Personally, for me.
well, I'm honored. Thank you.
I really,
And by the way, I did talk with Sherry about the community engagement. I think I have her support.
That was my support.
All right.
thank you,
Thank
Craig.
you.
Thank you for your
Thanks,
commitment to our community.
My honor.
I've valued your opinion other times, and not only you, but your whole family. I recognize a former school board member that had passed away here in the past year, and without his commitment to our community and the building of the Red Wing Votech at that time, we may not have post-secondary education opportunities in our community. Your dad was part of that, making that decision to build Southeast
wow.
Technical, which was Red Wing Votech.
Yes, it
The school
was.
board built at that time. So your family has deep roots here, and I'm very grateful for you being here.
Thank you. I'm honored about that.
Thank
Please
you.
be well.
Thank you, Craig.
Before we move on, can we, I mean, obviously we have many more things that we need to discuss. Can we talk about a timeline of how we want to? I mean, we need to fit in we need to fit in a discussion about where we're going to go.
I am confused about the contract now, because I didn't think there was any question about the contract,
I
and
think
so I.
When we get to our board meeting, we could put in our future meetings and discuss options on that. Does that make any sense
Yes, sir.
at that point
Yes, please.
in our regular board meeting?
That makes the most sense.
Okay. How's everybody doing here?
Just take a break. Been sitting for an hour plus.
Sherry's had a long time here,
It's
I
okay.
think committed here. We're
Do you wanna
gonna
take a
mess
break?
up on our time when this came up, and we felt we could do both here, and
4 minutes. Can
Mhm.
we get up and move on?
Absolutely.
4-minute break.
Yes,
Sounds good.
what are we doing with our camera?
Well, you can just leave it on. We're just taking, turn the
Just put
camera
it
off
in.
if you want. We're just gonna take a quick 4-minute, 5-minute
Okay,
break.
thank you.
Thank you.
Craig is a hard
and shared positions. Thank you, Sherry. I apologize for the dragging this out, but this opportunity came up quick and we felt that we should try to bring this into the workshop.
It's hard to predict how long each thing is going to last, so no worries. So good evening. Thank you, board members, for this opportunity to present this evening. As I'm going along, if you, it will not faze me at all. If you have a question and want me to answer it right then, I'm good with that. So we'll just go ahead and get started. And so Lisa, I will have you go to the next slide. I've divided this presentation into 6 areas, although as I present, you're going to see that they blend and cross over into each other quite a bit. Next slide, Lisa. I want to start with what is not only our mission statement, but the mission statement of all education districts as set by the legislature in the late 1980s. Core ideas are that we exist to optimize educational opportunities for students by increasing cooperation and coordination among districts. Next slide, Lisa. Just like Red Wing Public Schools has a joint powers agreement with the city of Red Wing, or like Colville and others, the Red Wing Public Schools has a joint powers agreement with other independent districts for the operation of the education district. So I think sometimes I hear people say, well, it's a contracted service. And so I'm just trying to draw that distinction for people. So the education district is not a contracted service, but rather an agreement that Red Wing Public Schools created to cooperatively provide services and conduct business. So the first area, Lisa, if you can go to the next slide, how did this all begin? What is the history? And you can jump right to the next slide. So over the we're going to bring you back to 1988. So over the 1988 and 89 school year, Red Wing began discussions of the needs and benefits of an education district. Cannon Falls, Goodhue, Mazeppa, and Zumbrota were already incorporated into the Wasioja Education District. Red Wing approached those districts and asked them to consider forming the Goodhue County Education District, which would add Red Wing to the other 4 and form the new district. The other 4 indicated that they would withdraw from the Wasioja District and join Red Wing in creating the Goodhue County Education District. One of the documents I shared with you tonight is the first joint powers agreement. This slide shows the dates required by statutes of the time for public notice, public hearing, meet and confer with each of the local unions, and eventual board adoption. The first joint powers agreement spelled out programming and sharing areas of the time. Programs include special education, gifted and talented, secondary vocational, early childhood and family ed, low incidence services, and improvement of educational practices based on research, and student services in relation to health and counseling. Areas for sharing of services included administrative services, professional development programs, providing summertime learning opportunities, coordinating technology use and curriculum, and developing methods to involve parents. I have to tell you, each time I look at that first agreement, I smile about the paragraph stating that there would be a common calendar for the districts within 1 year. 32 years later, we still haven't accomplished that goal. Next slide, Lisa. So another piece of the history that I wanted to touch on is earlier this fall, Board Member Rowe asked if there had been any follow-up on the analysis of special education programming that was completed by Futures Education in the spring of 2020. Futures Education presented their findings to the Red Wing School Board on April 27th of 2020. We were a little busy at that time. The analysis included 6 areas: a review of programs and services to support students with disabilities, related services, paraprofessional supports, organizational structure and district coordination of programs and services, MTSS and early intervention practices, and professional development. The Futures Group, much like the group that you're working now with, conducted 56 confidential interviews, completed site visits, a comparative analysis of other districts, and document reviews. Some of the findings included that Red Wing Public Schools expenditures are higher as a proportion of the operation budget than other county school districts. However, the report continued on to remind the reader that the high-need disability areas in Red Wing must be considered and are a primary driver of this. With respect to Red Wing's allocation to the education district, the district's contribution as a percentage of its special education budget was found to be 17.4%. It was the lowest among all of the county schools, with Cannon Falls at 32.5%, Kenyon-Wanamingo at 32.9%, and Lake City at 27.7%, for instance. In a related finding, GCD's tuition rates at $19.26 per service hour compared favorably to other cooperatives. In fact, they are the lowest in the state. Zumbro Ed per service hour is $20.75. Austin Albert Lee's cooperative is $25.03. Southern Minnesota Education Cooperative, $31.73. And the intermediate districts go up to $46.84. Graduation rates were cited as being lower overall for Red Wing. This is a focus area of Red Wing Public Schools. The researchers speculated that with the number of transitions in grade level centers, and we were still in grade level centers at that time, meant that vertical alignment would be difficult. The current study that's being conducted by Red Wing may further highlight this point. The Futures Group noted that Red Wing Public Schools was leanly staffed in special education administration. In response to that, a .5 coordinator was added, and .3 due process facilitators were placed at Sunnyside, Burnside, Twin Bluff, and the high school. This results in 1.7 FTE in additional support. Other recommendations in the report included needed curriculum adoption, formalizing the MTSS process, establishment of vertical alignment teams, and strengthening of CTE. Each of these recommendations are being addressed through Dr. Wagner's office and various Red Wing committees.
Do we have that information that you're reading?
I don't generally read right from the slide.
I know, but do we have that information?
You don't have that in the packet, no.
Why don't we have that?
You have it,
I'm
but she just. writes this up.
speaking it. I'm
sorry.
it's like I'm
It's
giving
good
you,
information though, and that's, I think, is that what you're getting at? Like, those are good numbers, good facts.
Good things
for us
to
to have.
I can-
Look at it.
I can do that.
Yeah.
As an accommodation, I have to
I
have
don't
that.
like people reading stuff that's in front of us. I like to be able to read stuff that they're presenting.
I will certainly share that.
Thank you.
Lisa, can I have the next slide, please? Okay, so to fulfill our mission, stakeholders from both within the cooperative and the member districts develop strategic plans. We also do our strategic plan every 5 years. The current strategic plan that we have was developed in the summer of 2021. Lisa, can you go to the next slide? So during that time, stakeholders identified 3 priority areas. The first strategic priority is a focus on MTSS development. And so I should go back. The stakeholders included all of the superintendents, administrators from all of the member districts, some of the board members. I don't think you were there, Holly, but my board members were invited. And then we also had teaching staff. And I believe there was one parent there. The cooperative is working with members in determining needs and providing support structures. This past summer, for instance, we sent over 50 staff from across the county to intensive MTSS professional development, including 6 staff from Red Wing Public Schools. Another objective in this area is to increase the use of data. The staff development mentioned was in addition to building level teams in the previous 2 years that we've sent to that same intense professional development through the University of Minnesota. When I say building teams, for instance, a principal like Jen Grove would go with a school psych with a number of teachers, and they would go up and go through that process. The second strategic priority is to increase mentoring and effective communication across administration and job-alike groups. This was really a huge area to make sure that we're sharing out what we're doing and that the superintendents know what's being shared with administrators, know what's being shared with staff, and there's a coordinated message. So work in this area has included collecting feedback from principals and revamping their meetings, sharing out board notes, and connecting groups with each other. The third strategic priority was to formalize regular onboarding of administrators. This might surprise you, maybe it won't. Since taking this position in 2007, there have been over 85 changes in administrators in this county. This means nearly 6 administrative changes in the county each fall. In the fall of 2021, we onboarded all administrators to assure everyone had current information, to reset, and to gather feedback on services. The onboarding includes offered services and supports, how to access those services, who to go to, supports, programming, history of the education JPAs, information on RBEC, and a myriad of other things. I think there was a question in a board meeting recently about evaluation and discipline. We also cover how we share evaluations across the county with, like, if staff are here in Red Wing, how we can partner on those evaluations. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a slide that's coming up. Lisa, next slide, please. So services and programming, what do we all offer? And Lisa, you can go right to the next slide. So we have administrative support and oversight of many programs. You can see them listed on this slide. Special education, alternative learning, EL services, extended school year, the Southeast Perkins Consortium, online learning, state-approved alternative programs, and Birth to 3 programs are provided to our districts. We partner to work on staffing, budgeting, program creation, curriculum areas, and problem solving. I'll talk a little bit about the state-approved programs briefly. So back in 2014, the Red Wing Public Schools actually approached me. They were struggling to run a middle-level ALC. What's critical about that is unless you have a viable high school ALC and a viable middle-level ALC, you cannot run targeted services, which is after school, before school program to grades K-8. We all know that when we can close gaps earlier, it's going to mean less cost later. Red Wing was not going to run it. It was part of their budget cuts. They were not going to run it in the subsequent year. This was a big deal. Red Wing has 800 to 1,000 students that attend targeted services each year. And it would have been a big hit and impact test scores, et cetera. At the same time, the other districts in the county had never had the opportunity to run targeted services because they didn't have the capacity to run both a high school ALC and middle level. We came together as a group and the superintendents asked if we would look at becoming the state-approved alternative program, which we did. What that did is opened up targeted services. It continued it in Red Wing, and it opened it up to the other districts. It was a great example of the collaboration among those districts and really something that you and the other districts did to improve student services and really reach out to kids. Let's see. I will probably talk about some of these others later on. Next slide, Lisa.
Do you have any data on the ALC and how it's going?
Yeah, I absolutely can bring that to you. Yes. At both the high school, middle level, targeted, and credit recovery. Got it. Okay, funding sources. This has been some of the big questions. So let's run through those. First of all, Minnesota school funding is complicated. It's okay, Lisa, you can go on to the next slide. I'll just keep talking. I was actually honored to be called upon by the Commissioner of Education to sit on the last Governor's Finance Task Force. And I will say that while they did not adopt our final plan, they have adopted many components of it. It is one of the most complicated funding systems in the country. And we are going to have to make changes to it. So that's going to be some work. We'll need the boards to support us on legislatively and MASA. And it's just work that's going to have to be continued. Okay, so there are 9 mechanisms really for this funding. Go ahead, Lisa, go to the next slide. We're going to start with special education programs. And I will get to your bill and all the components, right? So first of all, for special education programs, it's the same at the education district level as it is at an independent district level. So all special education costs are put into a system at the state level called Special Education Data Reporting Application, or SEDRA. At the education district, we enter all of those expenditures for all of our districts. Okay? So you don't have to hire someone internally to do it. Jackie and Cindy Lumen enter all of that data. This information is then matched to each district's UFARS, MARS, and STAR system. And in or around October 1st of each year, we complete a process called disability disbursement. And you're like, what difference does that make? Well, tuition bills are something that you have brought up at the board level. That disability disbursement creates rates for every disability area each year. So payroll, Holly in payroll, I'm not her favorite person, not you, Holly.
I was gonna say.
Holly Farms. So she does all of the,
Did you say favor of what? You're not favor of-
I am not her favorite person this time of year. So before school starts, she creates all these payroll codes, right? And she has to do it because we have to get the first payroll out. And then about now, I send her a note and I say, we have to change all of those codes for all of the special education staff. And Jennifer, if you're not, I should say, director, if you are not, you're not a general education teacher. So an English teacher will have one code. You happen to be a special education teacher, and you service some students who have learning disabilities and some who have emotional disabilities and some who are deaf, hard of hearing. That means you have 3 payroll codes. Okay? Some of our special education staff have up to 5 payroll codes. So I'm really not their favorite person right now. We will have that done by the end of this week and in payroll's hands. Why October 1st? That's when the Department of Ed has told us we need to do it. We can't do it until caseloads are stabilized enough. You have kids that move in at the beginning of the year, kids that leave, and so the Department of Ed chose October 1st. Once we do that and we split the percentage of time out by every disability area, we then know that a student with an emotional behavioral disability costs this much to instruct, right? And if that student is open enrolled from another district, that's how the Department of Ed decides the amount that they decide to bill that other district. The Department of Ed does all tuition billing. It used to be done at the district level. When I first started, and I was the assistant director here in Red Wing, I used to sit down with Debbie and we used to go through and create bills for every district. But the Department of Ed took it over in, I don't know, 2016, 14, something like that.
2007.
Well, whatever. And so I guess my main point is all special education expenditures go into SEDRA, they go into payroll. MDE takes that information, creates tuition bills, and also that's what generates the special ed revenue that's coming to your district. Okay. Next slide, Lisa. So alternative education programs. In 2014, at the request of the districts, like I said, we became the SAAP. There is an MDE spreadsheet for how this billing is to be done. It's right on the department website. You plug in your number, they do all the calculations, and we issue paper bills for alternative education programs. Credit recovery and targeted services are 2 of the only programs where you can generate quite a bit of revenue, and they really pay for themselves if we're doing them correctly. The districts submit applications for targeted services and credit recovery. They have to be approved by their building administrators, by the superintendents, before they're passed over to the fiscal host, us. So districts have a lot of latitude in how they are running that program. Next slide, Lisa.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Why would Red Wing choose to not do targeted services and credit recovery if it's generating revenue?
You do both.
But I mean, we don't have the licensure for them. It's run through you.
No, you are running your own targeted services programs and your own we are the fiscal host. So
Do we get the revenue or do you?
the revenue goes to you and, yeah, the resident district, just like an online.
Got it. Thank you.
Education districts cannot collect gen ed revenue directly from the state. Okay. So online programming. This has been on a lot of your minds. So Five Rivers was a collaboration of the 6 districts. It is the front title page says that these 6 districts run this program. In year 1, we served 450 students. And yes, it was that number. We ended the year with 388. Our current enrollment is 360. So we're up this year, even, a year ago, we were not at 360. I don't remember what we were at, but I just wanted to give you that current number. We are doing a formal presentation of the entire program at the next GCED meeting, and then we'll be bringing that out to the districts. GCED sent paper bills out for the comprehensively enrolled 5-year-old students. What does that mean? Full-time enrolled, okay? Billing for students enrolled in the supplemental class here, a couple classes, is done through the Department of Ed. This year, supplemental enrollment payments will happen throughout the year. So we did those at the end. But MDE is going to do those throughout the year this year. And we are studying the ability of mid-year bills for the full-time students or comprehensively enrolled students. With it's only being in the 2nd year, we don't have a lot of trend data yet. In looking at this slide though, as we developed this program with our members, and we talked about non-members. Non-member districts are charged what you would be charged if a student went to Blue Sky, the full gen ed revenue plus all of the referendum revenue. So the non-member districts were charged almost $10,000 a student for a full-time student. My member districts, we said that we would take our costs, subtract off the non-member revenue, and then divide by ADM. So a student, a comprehensive student for you, you can see was 46, I think, 40. Yeah, it was, can't remember exactly what that number is, but you can tell by the bars. So for our member districts, the way we set this up was really an advantage. And we want to serve our kids. We don't want them going to an online school somewhere else. We want to take care of them and we want to keep them connected to their communities. So I really see this as a benefit, and just anyway, the full report will give you more information on that. Lisa, can you go to the next slide? All right, $215,504.76. Who can tell me what that number is?
Monthly money we get.
That's correct. All right. So one of the handouts in the board packet was your monthly bill. All right. So let's take a look at that. This bill includes the names of staff, their FTE, salaries and benefits. It also includes other operational expenses. And you see the funding source is listed next to each item. This provides you with information about the monies you have available to pay the bill. Now, this was the preliminary bill when we adopted our budget. Understand that after disability disbursement and after we shift because kids moved in or out, we will update this, okay? We have to do a revised budget. We also do a revised bill, and then we true it up at the end of the year. Let's look at the staffing first. There are 29 staff that are being billed. The bill represents 1/12 of the cost of each of these staff and their benefits. For those staff that are serving our special education students, Red Wing receives in revenue from the state about 60% of that as special education revenue coming into your district. Okay. The other 40% is coming out of your general fund. That's that cross subsidy that we keep talking about.
Where are we at with that? What number are we down on the cross? My understanding, if I may, my understanding is the state and federal government have either pledged, promised, or not allocated, but
Promised.
Do you want me to jump in?
directed this money to come to the districts in the country. And it hasn't been allocated fully yet. My recollection of the meeting that you talked about when we had Senator Goggin and Representative Haley here was 3 to 4 million annually that we're not receiving from cross subsidy. Is that,
Yeah, I don't remember because I've been looking at various numbers. You are absolutely correct. The federal government, when they passed IDEA, promised districts they would cover 40% of the cost. Promised states. They have only ever caught, I think 17% is the highest they've ever hit.
allocated?
Yep. Representative Craig and Representative Stauber. I'm going to forget. All of our Minnesota delegation except one, and I can get to the name, I'm just blanking right now, have signed on to a glide slope to rectify that, okay? That the latest rendition of that bill was just a couple of months ago. It's on my desk. If we can get Representative Ilhan to take it to committee and have it heard, and it goes forward over the course of a number of years, they will go up to the 40. What we've been arguing with the state is you start here then and come down and meet them. So that's one of the arguments we've been making.
Where's the state at for funding on that? Are they?
Well, we had no funding last year, and now
I'm
the,
not talking about the two, but on the, I took it, maybe I'm wrong here, please help me if I am. The state is also part of that funding of the cross subsidy. Is that correct or not? It's only federal.
it's the unfunded part of special education, and
On the
people would
federal
say
level.
that it's federal.
Thank you for clarifying that. I was,
But what happens is, if it hasn't been solved at the federal level, then that leaves the states and locals to solve it.
correct.
Okay.
Normally it's the locals.
Yes. Okay, and so like I said, 60% of that bill is coming into you as revenue from the state. Okay. So Red Wing uses compensatory revenue to cover the cost of the EL staff that are on there. So I'm trying to draw a distinction for you about what's coming out of your general fund versus other revenue that's coming into your district. There's also one secretary on the bill that is 0.5 general ed and 0.5 special ed. And so you're being billed for the 0.5 general ed. That's a bill back for that. The final 4 remaining costs are leased for the building, long-term facility maintenance, administrative, and an operating fee. All right, let's talk about the first 2. The lease and the long-term facility maintenance are levies. So that money is, we don't have any households. So it's a levy that our member districts have. The money comes into you and it is passed to your ed district. And so it's a pass-through. It's not coming out of your general fund. It's coming out of what you have levied the taxpayers. Same thing with long-term facility maintenance. It's coming in from the taxpayers and you flow it through to us. Right? So then what's administrative? Someone said to me, well, that's you. No. So in this other handout we gave you on each of these areas, we do have other costs such as custodial supplies, Cindy Lumen, for instance, our business manager, payroll, it's those types. So when it says administrative, it's not talking about administrators. It's talking about administrative. And then you'll see it, something there called overhead. So technology, for instance, technology is not something that we can cost off to special education or to the ALC program. It's an overhead expenditure. So let's see, those 2 amounts on your monthly bill are $4,100 and, well, maybe I should look at the total for the year. Administrative, it's $49,266, and operating, it's $74,910. So those, we provide a federal grant in the same amount back to you. So that's 0 cost to the districts. You provide us the money that we then can use to pay general ed expenditures, because remember, gen ed expenditures can't come to an education to your education district. And then we provide a a special ed federal grant back to you that you can use to cover some of those unreimbursed special education costs. So those bottom 4 areas, those are just pass-throughs, flow-throughs, or a passing back and forth. They're not a cost to your general fund or anything like that. Yes, Holly?
So with a lot of bills, there's hidden fees. Is there a hidden fee on this?
There's no
to
hidden
be
fee.
A fiscal host?
No,
So
Actually, we
I
are the-
don't understand all of the billing and all of this.
Yep.
It's so complex.
no,
Okay,
there is no hidden cost, and I believe we're the only cooperative that doesn't charge a member fee. What some cooperatives do is they charge you that in operations, but they don't give you a federal back. They don't give you that same amount of money back in a federal grant. We have always chosen to do that to help our members out. But I know, for instance, SMEC that I just talked about, Southern Minnesota Education Cooperative. They have a membership fee, and their districts do not get a federal grant back. So there's no cost. So you've got the 29 staff members, the EL, the secretary, and those 4 on the bottom that are passing back and forth of cash or flow through. Questions on that bill? And we will, again, when we do a revised budget, we update this, et cetera, and you'll see that.
Is your expense on here?
No, you are not billed for my expense. Okay, Lisa, the next slide. I'm sorry.
I'm gonna say it now, this is overwhelming for information.
I know.
You're reading stuff to us. I think,
Actually, I just read off this and you have this.
no, I know that, but you've been reading other stuff that I would love to have in front of me to view and discuss. So I think we need to have another meeting with this than just right now, and, because we're gonna go on for another, way you're going, it looks like, looking through the information, we maybe get another hour,
No.
45 minutes.
Uh-uh.
Okay, you got 5 then.
Okay, thank
we
you.
have you twice more on workshops though, correct?
Well,
Oh, that's right. So there was a request basically from the board.
Yep.
To condense those other 2 into one. So there is another one that would come up if that's necessary based on what we have. But this is the preliminary one. This is the one that you've been asking for. There is a backup. There were 3 sessions actually scheduled. We combine them together.
in recognition that you had a number of things that you needed, like the superintendent search to do. So we're being just respectful. I will come back as often as you want.
Thank you.
Okay, there are some other areas, third-party administration for members. We handle all the third-party administration, so that's MA, medical assistance insurance. Sorry, the acronyms, we just use so many of them, and sometimes I just can't quite pull them up. That cost is split out based on the hours billed in each district. That revenue, third-party revenue, comes directly to you, and then we send you a bill for the cost of doing that billing. You pay for it out of that revenue that came in. We do hire an audiologist. That's billed at the end of the year. She serves 10 districts, and so there's no other way to do that. We are the host to various federal grants, but there's no charge for that. And then I already talked about those final ones. Lisa, next slide, please. So the building, I get a lot of questions on the building. So about a decade ago, we were faced with a situation where our buildings had about 10 million in deferred maintenance, and we really didn't know what to do. So the GCD board charged us with doing a facility study. We did that in 2012. There were multiple options brought to the table and eventually taken down to 3 options, which the boards brought down then to the 1 option. Lisa, can you go to the next slide? So the GCD actually leases RVEC from the members, the building and the land. So we don't own it. You lease it to us for use. When the JPA for this building was unanimously approved, in the spring of 2014 by all member districts. Paul Cramp was Red Wing's representative on the GCD board at that time. And I'm sure you know that, and just really for the public to let them know that. Red Wing's board consisted of Steve Anderson, Emily Baldwin, Mike Christensen, Janie Fair, Heidi Jones, Paul Cramp, and Mark Ryan. Go ahead to the next slide. I think one of the big things for this district is the cost sharing that occurred because of this. So for instance, when you resurface the parking lot, GCD now covers 20% of the cost of you resurfacing that. We also get snow removal and all of that. We pay 10% of those costs. You bill us, and then we pay the cost, okay? Now, you didn't say to your food service director at the time, we are adding GCD to you, so we're going to increase your salary. You took their current salary and then started billing us for 10% of that salary. So it's a great benefit to us because we wouldn't be able to hire a food service director, but it also was a cost savings to you. And I think we really appreciate that. So that's in the area of food service, school health, buildings, grounds, and technology. And I really do try to partner with Frank so that Joni Gorman, for instance, at your last board meeting, you passed a policy, and I don't remember if it was first reading or second reading, but you put a policy forward about changing something in the health. I wanted to make sure we did that too then so that we could keep Joni on the same page. So I really try to partner that way and make it easy. Next slide, Lisa. I think you're all familiar with what's in the program, but there are itinerant spaces, our business office, and then there are 3 separate programs, a high school ALC, our Setting 4 programs, and our transition program. Next slide, Lisa. So other benefits, and this is the last area. Go ahead and get to the next slide, Lisa. Trying to listen to Director Bryant and my 5 minutes. I think I have 2. Okay, so I just have a list. One of the questions I get is, what isn't the Red Wing District or Cannon Falls District billed for? So I wanted to give a list of things that you receive, but you are not billed for. And actually, Lisa, I think if you go to the next slide, these are just some things I want to highlight that we've added in recent years. We now have a behavior team that has an autism consultant, school psych, social worker, and OT. You're not billed for that at all. But when you have a class that's struggling, this team goes out and works with that teacher. This year we started a reading center. My GCD board will get the first progress report on that at our next board meeting. We're really excited about some results we're seeing in one of our districts. Best Team Grant. One of your classrooms at Twin Bluff actually was awarded this grant, and they have regional people working with them to develop the processes in that area. And Care Solace, you've already heard about. So last slide, Lisa. So I tried to kind of summarize it here. There's on the left are the items you pay for, either through the monthly bill or end of year billing, and then, or tuition billing. And then if you weren't part, so people say to me, what's the benefit? If you weren't part of the cooperative, what would be new costs? And that's only if you wanted to continue them. So the behavior team, you have a 1.0 instructional coach at Burnside that you don't pay for. It does appear on your bill, but you'll see it's a 0 cost there. The autism consultant, deaf, hard of hearing teacher, vision teacher, orientation mobility services, 0.3 speech, and you can read the rest of it. CARE membership is a group, it's a research group out of the U of M. But I think the rest are pretty, your FAST system, the FAST testing system you have, the GCD covers the cost of that for all member districts. So I just, that was a lot of information. I will make sure that you get all of my notes. I just can't do a presentation without having my notes all in front of me. So.
I think this last slide is.
And if I have an error, maybe I have an error.
No errors. I just think this one is really critical, and I think we could have spent a whole long time on all of this. Just the services that we pay and then the things that we wouldn't pay, that could be a new cost, but it may look good on paper in this way. I just have a lot more questions around that, so.
Well, I think the work that you're doing for Kids in Red Wing is extraordinary, and the partnerships you have with not only the Ed District, but the Big Nine schools, and it really shows how important you think the work is.
Thank you, Karen.
Yeah,
Jim?
thank you.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, Director Bryant.
When I was a commissioner, it used to come before the county welfare board. Remember that?
I do.
You still do
I
that?
still do that.
With Nia?
Mhm.
Oh, okay.
And I still have notes.
Yeah. Thank you for the information.
Yes.
It's a ton of information
It's a
that
time.
it's hard to digest tonight, so.
Yeah.
Thank you.
There'll be more opportunities.
Great.
Okay, and on the agenda, we have other topics. I don't think we're looking for any, are we?
We just talked about Mr. Morris's information about superintendent search, or
No, we're gonna do that at
At the
a
board
future meeting, at the
Oh,
board meeting, I
Okay,
thought.
not here at the workshop, we're not putting it, okay.
And then the other thing is adjournment. We need a motion to adjourn, and that will be done by roll call because we have one.
Nikki,
I'll second that, Holly.
Moved by Holly, second by Jennifer to adjourn the workshop. After we do the roll call, we'll reconvene our regular board meeting at 7:05. Or not reconvene, but start our regular board meeting at 7:05. So for the roll call to adjourn, we'll start with Holly.
Aye.
Jim,
aye.
Jennifer,
Aye.
Pam.
Aye.
Nikki,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye. 6 ayes, no nays. We are adjourned. Once again, 7:05 PM, 7:05, we will start the regular board meeting. I should have done it quicker. finally got done with our school board workshop. We are now going to call the regular school board meeting to order. It is Monday, October 17th. Once again, 7:05 PM. Board Chair Ostendorf is not with us tonight, so I, Arlen Dirks, as Vice Chair, will be running the meeting. Nikki Buck will be attending the meeting remotely. We did the Pledge of Allegiance at our workshop. And Jennifer, can you read the vision statement, please?
The mission of the Redmond Public Schools is to educate and inspire all students as they realize their full potential and become respectful, responsible, and productive citizens.
Thank you. Next, we have approval of the agenda, and we need a change. Jim?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Under communications, we have a 2023 benefit plan. We're going to find out about it here tonight. I asked that the voting of it or the moving forward with the plan falls under the business items. So we can do that per email we got.
Right.
So,
Right, so,
So we'll have the discussion and that, and we'll vote on it under the number 5. I'd ask that move to number 5 of the business items. Yea or nay?
item 5. Do we have anybody presenting to us on anything from the public?
Amy gonna do that?
No.
No. Oh, okay, so we will do that as
Public comment.
item 5 here, the benefit plan discussion and possible vote. Any other changes to the agenda?
Motion to approve the amended agenda.
Moved by Jim, is there a second?
Second.
Tamara seconded the approval of the agenda. We have to do everything. We will be doing roll call here on this vote. We'll, an approval agenda. We'll start with Jim,
Aye.
Jennifer,
Aye.
Pam,
Aye.
Nikki,
Aye.
Ollie,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye. All right, next we'll call ourselves to attention to the education plan. We just have that in our board packet at every meeting as a reminder of our focus and our vision, which we already read here as we go forward, which drives us for our decisions as we go. Recognitions and upcoming events. Do you have anybody make any?
Sure, I'll just share that the girls tennis program concluded their season and have great accolades for those young women who did excellent this year. And the team itself got, the Academic All-Star Award, and 2 individuals also got Minnesota academic awards. So not just the conference, but all in Minnesota. So that's a pretty proud achievement for them.
I heard they beat, as a 6th seed, they beat the 3rd seed, I believe, Wasika.
Yeah,
Which
it's
was
been some really fun
fabulous.
tennis to watch.
Great,
Yeah.
great accomplishment right there.
Mhm.
I have
Go ahead.
I just wanted to recognize that a former school board member was the recipient of the Amos Owen Award the other night at the city council. And I think that being the first woman chair of the Red Wing School Board, Heidi Jones, receiving that award, it's pretty monumental. Being the first board chair as a woman, hearing Mr. Morris speak about how his grandmother wasn't able to hold an elected office, all of those things that people take for granted. It was a big, big thing when Ms. Jones was able to do that. And so I just wanted to recognize that she received the Amos Owen Award the other night and congratulate her.
Yes.
Thank you. Yes, once again, congratulations Heidi Jones on her being awarded the Amos Owen Award. Very dedicated. And I had the pleasure of working with her on the board here. Thank you, Holly, for that. Any other recognition of upcoming events?
MEA's next week?
This week.
This week.
Apparently you aren't.
2-hour release, right, early release on Wednesday and then no school Thursday.
Behind a week, so.
Okay, nothing else on that. We'll go to public comment. I didn't go back and look and see if anybody signed up.
I didn't see anybody there when I walked by.
Did you get any communication for public comment?
No.
And then nobody here for public comment, then we'll move on. Communication next is the Red Wing College Promise. I know that's just a fascinating thing that is happening here. Who is presenting on this?
I can,
You can?
absolutely. I can,
Mr.
and
Norton
then
will
I've got a
take it.
couple of guests.
Oh, we do? All right. Well, that's awesome.
So I'll introduce basically the beginning of it. Hold on, girls. So the Red Wing College Promise is an initiative of the Minnesota State College Southeast and the Jones Family Foundation. And just recently, this past week, there was a press conference that was held and an announcement was made to the public. And beginning in August of 2023, the College Promise ensures that qualified students who graduate from Red Wing High School and live in the District of 256 will receive a free tuition to Southeast College. Benefit basically from the Jones Foundation itself in cooperation with Southeast Technical College and the school district. That cooperation's been going on for about 6 months now. Behind the scenes, there's a lot of work and a lot more to do. We meet again on October 24th to begin the process of what does that look like. But I did invite a couple of students to be able to come forward. So why don't you guys come on up and can have a seat up here. You'll be on screen. So Alexa and Reagan. And what I've asked them to do basically is just to be able to give us a little bit of information, sometimes coming from the mouths of our students that are going to have the most impact. Gives us an idea of what this means to the students themselves. So kind of putting them on the spot a little bit, but they've had a chance to be able to think about it. So why don't you just give us an idea, and the community that's listening out there, a little bit of an idea of how this helps you and what you thought when you heard about that. So go ahead, whoever wants to go.
Okay. I think,
Rock, paper, scissors.
Let's introduce yourself first so that we know.
oh, I'm Alexa. I'm Reagan.
And thank you so much for waiting for us tonight. We're
Yeah.
really pleased to have you here.
I think this is a great opportunity for me. I come from more of a low income household and I want to go to medical school. I want to be an EMT, and medical school is like expensive, especially for getting your doctorate. That's like 8 years. And then having those 2 years for free tuition where I can get like my generals and then maybe transfer to another big university. That's a lot of stress taken off of me. And then even there, if I decide I don't want to be an EMT, I don't want to go in the medical field, then I've had those 2 years in my generals and I can easily switch to something else.
Yeah, I want to go into the healthcare field, and I was very worried about like if I wanted to switch my major or anything between the time that I go to college. So hearing about the Red Wing College Promise was really helpful, knowing that I can at least go there, get my generals done, and go to wherever I want for a dream college and just focus on my major, what I really want to do, instead of having to worry about generals and paying for all of that.
Yeah, it's really exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have any questions for them at all, or?
Are you seniors?
No,
Juniors.
yeah, we're
Juniors?
Jennifer?
Yeah, I was going to mention something else, but thank you for being here so much.
Yes, thank you.
I love both of you, and I just am so proud of you for being here, and it just makes me tear up knowing the difference that this Red Wing Promise will make for so many kids, and I'm just so grateful for that. Thank you for expressing that as well for us.
Thank you. Anybody else, Jim?
Thank you. Alexis, is it?
Alexa?
You hit the nail on the head when when you said it took the stress off of me. I was at that press conference. I was invited and I went, and I happen to know the Jones family and many of the board members, and Mr. Norton was correct. It took those months behind the scene planning and working, and nothing got, the my knowledge, got leaked out. I didn't know anything about it. Got 6:03 at night, Wednesday night, or Monday night, or whatever it is, to come tomorrow to a meeting. That was, but anyway, when they announced it, it was just like, there was a room full of students. Were you two there?
Yes.
Yeah. And it was just like,
Yeah.
it was just like unbelievable. And the impact on the students of 2023, the graduates, which is you two, is enormous. We got to remember that it's going to carry on for years to come for the kids behind. And we have to be ready. We have to be prepared for ourselves here. We have to take the next step to help them used to and others get ready to have that opportunity if they wish to do so. It was amazing morning. And I did not expect it when I heard it. Did not expect it at all as to what they announced. I know Mr. Norton presented a little bit there at the end, but tremendous gift for the students, which are the recipients, and for the community and for the school. The Jones are very proud of the school, of the city, the district, and the schools and the education. I've had the pleasure of knowing Mr. Scott Jones' mother and father. Wonderful people. So I'm sorry, I'm rambling on. You hit the nail on the head when you said relieve the stress. That's exactly what I thought too. So thank you.
Thank you. I think in case anybody's wondering here, I wanted to just highlight Mr. Morris previously mentioned in the superintendent search in our material about the philanthropy in our community. Here's just a super example. And for those that are listening, don't know what the Red Wing College Promise is, the Red Wing College Promise will provide each participating student with tuition fees up to 70 college credits at Minnesota Southeast College Southeast. $500 annual textbook material allowance per year. Assistance with enrolling at the college and navigating financial aid. Individualized success coaching once enrolled as a student. Once again, that's the initiative from the State College Southeast here and Jones Family Fawcett Foundation. And so once again, thank you to both of them, and thank you to you two for coming here to our meeting. I'm really excited about this. This is a big deal for our community and our students. It's just a big deal. So thank you. Thank you.
Let me just add one more thing. Mr. Norton kind of alluded to it a little bit. The Jones Foundation is also hiring what they call a navigator, I believe it is, to help the students get signed up and what they need to do that. And that's all funding is coming from the Jones Foundation to work between the two schools here.
Yeah, I did talk to Sheila Beckner today, and she was an integral part of making this happen.
Yeah, I saw
She
it.
wanted to be here tonight, but was unable to be here, so she did say that she can come back anytime if we would like to talk to her or have any
Absolutely.
questions. But that was one thing she wanted to make clear, is that there's no cost to the district at all.
Right.
That the Jones Family Foundation and the college will be paying for that navigator to help students on both ends, on the Red Wing Public School side and on the college side. So that's incredible.
Harlan, I just wanted to say something. I said, I had my little hand in
Yeah, Keith, please remind me what I meant.
That's okay.
That's fine.
I was also that student coming out of high school, wondering, how are we absolutely going to afford college? And the stress that I went to my freshman year with was almost more than I could take. And so I really am excited for you, that you get to go stress-free and be in your community while you do it, and then have opportunities to work or do whatever you want. And I think that the important thing about this is twofold. One, you want to go to college and you do everything, but then you stress out about how am I going to pay for it when I get there. And I work with so many students who, why bother to graduate? I can't go to college anyways, I can't afford it. And now that has been taken, that piece of stress has been taken and put on a shelf, and kids can go, yeah, but teachers can say, but you can go, you absolutely can go, because this family has provided this opportunity for kids. So I'm super excited for your lack of stress coming for you, and I'm just excited for all the kids to now have a vision about what that could mean for them and what it means for Red Wing.
All their dreams.
You guys are awesome for coming and sharing your stories. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Norton, for having me come.
Yeah, great.
I can speak from them, from their standpoint.
Well, I
speak
think
for
this
them,
is
but
the
it's always-
highlight of the evening here.
Oh, absolutely.
Next on the agenda is for communication on the 2023 benefit plan year. My understanding is we're going to have information on this at this time. Is that correct, or are we moving everything?
Nope, we will have the information now, the
Now.
communications portion of it.
Right,
And then Mr. Bryan has moved the actual adoption
Right.
or the vote into the
well,
business.
giving us a chance to vote, so thank you. So the presenter actually is Jackie, I guess.
It's a team approach
It's a
tonight.
team.
On the call, we also have our representatives from Intellicence, Lynn Kermis and Logan Tufty.
Hi. Good evening.
Would you gentlemen like to take it from here, or do you want us to introduce the topic more?
No, we can, Jackie, it's up to you, but we can definitely jump in here. First of all, good evening, everyone. My name is Lynn Kermis with Intellicence. I've been fortunate to work with the school district here for a number of years. I will say that you put me in a pretty tough time slot here. Following that announcement, I don't know, there could have been almost anything to talk about, but benefits is probably not the thing you want to do after a nice excitement thing like that. But what I do want to talk to you guys about today is we've been working with LMC on your benefit renewal. And as we go through this process, by state statute, every 2 years at minimum, we need to go out to a formal RFP, solicit bids for all the carriers in the state of Minnesota, and then anyone that may want to provide a quote that we do not formally know or that may be new to the marketplace is provided a public notice in the newspaper, and then we compile those results to try and find the best options for the LMC to consider. And then in today's meeting, I believe it is to try and go through that information and provide the recommendation to the school board for consideration. As we went through this process, there were a number of providers that were sent the information and asked to provide a quote. Through that process, 2 providers declined to quote. They were Health Partners, who is a long-term partner of the Red Wing School District, and then they work through a municipal pool with other other governmental entities across the state called Sourcewell, and they also declined to quote. As we looked at the remaining providers, there were 2 that seemed to be the most competitive to one another. They were Blue Cross Blue Shield of Minnesota, and then the Minnesota Healthcare Consortium, who for many, many years had a relationship with Blue Cross Blue Shield of Minnesota, and then in 2021 formed an official partnership with Medica. As we went through that, a couple of things that are worth noting. This renewal was much more difficult than renewals in the past the city or the school district has to negotiate. There were a number of factors. One of the factors was some of the unknown and delayed care that COVID has caused many health insurance plans to experience. And then in addition to that, there just were higher claims this year than we've previously experienced. When we went through that entire process, the best option was going to Blue Cross Blue Shield of Minnesota. Unfortunately, that was with an 18.5% increase. With the type of numbers we're talking about, obviously this is not insignificant. Trying to figure out ways that the Red Wing School District could afford this, as well as its employees, was very important to the LMC. So we went through a number of different options, looking at various different ways that we may be able to pull some levers to work on that number. At the end of the day, there were 2 significant changes that are being proposed for the school board to consider today. Would it be appropriate for me to share my screen momentarily to kind of go through a little bit of that data?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay, just a sec here. Oh, it says my browser cannot share the screen.
You want me to share it, Lynn? Which would you like me to bring up?
Well, Jackie, I actually took and kind of consolidated in more of an executive summary. Would you mind if I sent you a quick email? Do you have your email available?
I do.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and send this to you real quick. Okay, it's off. As she's waiting for that, I'm going to be pulling that up. There are 2 core medical plans that will still be in place. They are a $3,000 individual and a $6,000 family deductible, as well as a $5,000 individual and $10,000 family deductible. Both of these plans are on the Aware Open Access Network, meaning that the vast majority of medical facilities and providers in the state of Minnesota and the surrounding area, including the first county in Wisconsin, would all be in network. It's approximately 98% of all those providers. With that, we wanted to look and say, once again, how can we manage with the financial change that we're dealing with? And so one of the things that was discussed and that will be hopefully implemented for employees to choose would be to find some premium relief in adding a higher deductible, lower premium option for employers to consider. That would be on the Open Access Network, the same network as the other 2 plans are on, but with a higher risk allocated to those employers that choose that. In addition to that, after a long discussion, there is another alternative that we are promoting today, and that is to mirror the 2 current medical plans that have been in place for a long period of time, since 2013, I believe, adding in a limited network option. And the most significant consideration for that is that limited network option would mean that the Mayo Clinic and its satellite locations, including the Mayo Clinic of Red Wing, would not be in network. Jackie, I'm on slide 5 right now. It also excludes a few other providers, most notably the VA clinic. If we go to the next 2 slides, we've tried to highlight, there's an exhibit for what is considered the major providers in Southeast Minnesota, as well as the major providers that would be more of a metro location, to try and give a little bit of background here. As you can see, by Blue Cross Blue Shield's determination, both Mayo Health System and the VA in Southeast Minnesota would be out in network. With this, I want one thing that is important. The Well at Work clinic would not be affected by this. If you look at this, looking at more of the metro network and the available medical systems, you can see that Health Partners Health System would not be available in a high value network. That does not affect the ability for those members that would choose this to utilize the Well at Work clinic for their medical conditions and treatments. The most reasonable locations that most people would be able to go to would be Olmsted Medical Center or Northfield Hospitals and Clinics. Oh, sorry. It looks like there's Nikki, you have a question?
Go ahead, Nikki.
Is this something we can ask our employees, their input? Because I would hate to really make decisions for the overall group without their consent. Because I, as a chronic health patient, I have lots of input with my own experience. But I don't want to be making decisions for other people. So I want to know if there's a way, if we can hold like an informational for our employees to get their input and what they think
A couple of things. I just want to be clear. This is adding another option, and part of the LMC, and there definitely have been concerns about that very thing. They have been speaking with their memberships, trying to determine if this would be something that they would indeed find value in. I think that they have come back with a determination that they do feel like if their membership would like to have these options. So I think that that's kind of been done to some degree. In addition to that, we are acknowledging that this will take a very robust education campaign at all locations. And we are requiring might be a stretch, but Jackie, our intention is to be able to sit down with everyone and make sure that they have the information that's in front of them, knowing what is in and out of network before they would make a decision based on a price point consideration.
Lynn? Lynn, this is Jim.
Jim Ryan, sir.
Thank you. You're right, and Nikki brings up a good question, and for everybody's knowledge on here, the LMCs by every union group is represented in there, and we've delayed this coming to the meeting on the, what is today? 17th. We could have come on the 3rd, but we wanted to, that way the staff, the members of the LMC would go out and meet with their member groups and talk to them. So Nikki brings a great question. But Lynn has answered it pretty well. We've done the best labor management committee.
Okay.
And we've done our best to get everybody. Are there going to be questions? Absolutely. There always are during enrollment. So thank you.
Yep, and as Lynn had said, we are offering extra choices. So the plans we had for 2022 are still there. They can still opt into those if they'd like. They're just going to be more expensive. We are giving our staff the high value network as an option if it works for their family.
And I think also a number of our staff don't even live within the Red Wing area, so they may already be up in the cities. And so they can go there and reduce their costs by being part of that option that Jackie talked about, if they so choose.
Nikki raised her hand again.
Okay, so they get the option. We don't have to make the choice for them, whether it's each or. Wow.
Yeah. The board's only decision tonight is to go with, if we are going to go with Blue Cross Blue Shield as the vendor.
Okay, wow, that makes a tremendous difference. Thank you for explaining that, Jackie.
Yep. And you guys, one of the things that we're all very fortunate living here in Southeast Minnesota is we do have wonderful medical care. With that, there's a premium for that care, in particular with Mayo, that's more expensive. The reason why this is all being done is if I think we go forward another couple of slides, we do have the financial impact of this. So this is what we're dealing with. And earlier in this presentation, we can provide this. I didn't send this earlier, but I thought this would be an easier way for the school board to review this information. You can see that the two plans that would both be the 3,000, 6,000, and 5,000, 10,000 open access plans. Those are the total monthly premiums for single or family. So $858.35 for the $3,000 plan on the open access. If an individual would choose to limit their access and essentially take a non-Mayo plan, that would go down to $683 or about $170 less expensive per month. If they would choose to do the family, there'd be about a $430 a month total premium. Now, each one of these vary a little bit. This is total premium, not looking at any of the collective bargaining contracts or anything like that, but we're trying to show the price decrement difference between the various different options.
Thank you for this little diagram. I just want to be clear so I understand it clearly for myself. The 858 or the 683, that is straight out of their paycheck every 2 weeks, or no?
This would be what the district pays to Blue Cross and Blue Shield.
Thank you.
before the employee, this is not split out employee-employer contribution because that varies so widely between bargaining groups.
That's what I didn't want. So thank you for telling me that that's not what that is.
And as you go through, like I said, there's a pretty substantial, one of the things that you look at this is truly, if you look at the difference between those, that is the way that Blue Cross Blue Shield would say, because if you choose a non-male option of the high value network, you're still going to have the same medical conditions. And they're estimating, this is Blue Cross Blue Shield's underwriters and Blue Cross Blue Shield's way of looking at this, the difference in what that individual going through the open access versus the limited network, what that risk on their books would look like. And if you look at the far right, that is also another option that would be added. That would be for those that want open access, but are willing to take on a higher risk or higher deductible for themselves or their family. Just another way to try and reduce that overall premium that individuals are going to be faced with an increase of 18.5% average.
Very good, Lynn.
Yep. Any other questions for me or how we ended up at this?
I guess not. We got Jackie and Amy here also. Any more discussion of the board at this time? Like I say, the vote will be coming up in the business items. Amy, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I will say I have talked to employees about this since this got posted, and having additional options has allowed us to retain staff because they can afford insurance. So I'm glad that we're able to expand and offer some more options.
Jim, go ahead.
Yeah, Amy's right. The committee met, we were sticker shock when we heard 18.5%. We were like, it was just quiet. Well, after we got through that, we worked through that and come up with this discussion, and they went back to their groups and talked to the informed people, asked them, and this is how we come up with these options for the employees to consider. And Lynn and Logan and Amy are going to have to be available through webinars or through whatever to educate people the best they can, short little words, but be available to answer questions, because somebody's going to all of a sudden say, well, what happened? I didn't know anything about this. Well, it happens. When you have as many hundreds of employees, we have to be available and have to help them through the process of enrollment. So, but the committee met and went thoroughly through everything, really good. And we were able to come up with these options for them to consider. So,
Who's on the committee?
Myself, and I think, are you the alternate? And it's pretty much all the bargaining units.
Okay.
One of the union reps and I are the chairman. And then everybody that invited is supposed to show up. Maybe not everybody comes, but they do their best. They're invited. They get the information.
Yep. I would also just interject that I would really give a lot of kudos to Jim, Jackie, Amy. The collective bargaining representatives have been very active in dealing with their membership. I've had personal phone calls with multiple collective bargaining representatives trying to help use the right words to break this to their employer or the folks they represent. And I know that they've been doing the best they can to try and get the word out and get input from everyone. I also just want to let the school district know, you've done a lot of really proactive things like adding the Well Over Clinic. And even though this is a very, very difficult renewal, I will say that looking at your 9-year, and the reason why I'm using 9-year overall insurance renewals is that's when the plans that are in place, your core $3,000 and $6,000 and $5,000 and $10,000 plans have been in place statically that whole time. Your annualized annual increase ranges dependent upon single and family and plan from 1.23 annualized to 2.21 over that 9-year period. So now this will obviously move that annualized number relatively higher, but considering the medical trend has been running between 7 and 8%, that is a pretty long period of very controlled renewals that we're dealing with now. And that I will tell you, if any of you have spoke with peers in the area, many of the other public sector groups that are out there have been dealing with significant increases. Some of them, I work with a school district that actually received a 49.9% from PEEP.
Wow. And Lynn, you're right about, the clinic and that. We hope our staff utilizes the clinic and all, because I think the city of Red Wing's part of the clinic
Yeah.
too, their employees. But yeah, if you do something, there is a cost every time you go to the doctor, whether it's a copay or you don't pay anything. There is a cost to somebody. So our clinic is there to help with some stuff that you're not, whatever. You can avoid going to the clinic, go to the well clinic, and you're happy with that. That would be the suggested way to go.
Okay, any more questions, anybody right now? Because I assume these two gentlemen will not be here to help us when we have our vote. Unless they're gonna stick around later.
You stick around, Lynn or Logan, or we're gonna vote in about 20 minutes.
5 minutes. Not really, but.
Stick around.
I can. I would like to get something to eat tonight, but maybe
Same here. Score the football game.
Yeah, Jackie, I don't know. Do you feel comfortable answering any questions? Do you plan on staying, or would you like us to stay?
I plan on staying, and I think I am comfortable answering any questions that may remain.
Ask the questions they need to ask, then
Yeah.
you should be good to go.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank
you.
Thank you all.
Bye.
All right, that being done there, we'll go to referendum planning. Ms. Robertson is our communications manager. Is she on the call here?
I sure am.
Hi,
Mr. Davis,
Diane.
I'm right here. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, great. I really don't have much to report. It's 3 weeks from tomorrow is election day. We have made several more presentations or been present at several different things. We have some people who will be at the Chamber Business Expo tomorrow. And then we have some meetings coming up for the future. And that's really, we're just holding tight and trying to explain to people that it's a renewal and an extension, and that try and make sure that they understand the ballot language.
Mr. Bryant's got a question.
Hello, Ann. How did the meeting go last Wednesday evening with the public? How did that go?
Well, it was not terribly well attended, but I think that we had an open house in 2018 that also did not attract a lot of people. I think it's mostly people have been just getting their messages to out in other avenues. So I had 2 people there. I think that's all I had.
Oh well, keep trying.
All right.
Thank you.
Will do.
I think there's been some successful meetings though, haven't there?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yes,
Outreach.
very much. Very engaging. I think that because we were proactive and got out in September, a lot of people already do understand what the school board's intent is. So
When we go to them, it's well attended.
Right.
Yeah.
Coming here is a little bit smaller, but
Ann, are you gonna stay on the call for the rest of the meeting?
yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
All right, anything else there on referendum planning? If not, we'll go on to school board reports. Any board members have anything to report? Mr. Bryant.
Thank you. You heard pretty much the LMC meeting. They quite a lot of work, but I also want to report, not a committee meeting, but a meeting I was at. I went to the Excel meeting at Treasure Island. last Tuesday, wasn't it? Or Tuesday, somewhere around there, one of the Tuesdays coming up, I think it was a week, almost 2 weeks ago. And, Excel LA does a nice job, the Prairie Island community does a wonderful job, Treasure Island, Prairie Island community for hosting it, allowing to be there, and great partners, good information, good questions. At the end, Ross Lexfold stated, they gave out sturdy wheat pancakes for everyone that attended. Package, very nice. They purchased them. Well, they had extras. He says, I don't want to carry them out of here. I carried them in. So Ann, Dawn Wetter, maybe Martina, and come up and we talked, and they went and asked them if they could take the remaining sturdy wheat packages to the food shelf here at the school. I thought that was a wonderful idea and gesture. So thank you, Ann, Dawn, Martina. If those were the ones involved, anybody else I'm missing, thank you for thinking of that and doing that. And again, to Prairie Island and everybody that was nice meeting. It was very nice. So I just want to give them kudos for thinking of that, because Ross didn't want to haul them out of there.
I have something from Community Ed. So we received the $800,000 deed grants last year. And so there was a manufacturing luncheon today. And I think the city declared October Manufacturing Month at the city council meeting, beginning of October. So at today's manufacturing luncheon, I'm reading it straight from the text. The Pathways to Prosperity grant partners from Minnesota State College Southeast, Workforce Development Incorporated, and Hiawatha Valley Adult Education spoke on the success of the manufacturing classes. There have been over 400 participants who have prepared for careers in welding, CNC, and manufacturing over the 7 years the grants have been available. So I had to ask what CNC meant, and in my mind it was certified nursing something, but I was wrong. It's a machinist. It's a manufacturing type job. So I want to be very clear. CNC is training for machinists. So I was thinking certified nursing. Of course I was wrong. Manufacturing. But I just thought that was very great. And it's because we received the deed grants that we're going to help more people right here in Goodhue County and Hiawatha Valley. So thank you, Community Ed and Jill.
Anybody else on school board reports?
There was nothing for GCED
Nope,
in October.
I reported at the last meeting.
No, I know we have a meeting
Next one
November
is
3rd.
November.
Yeah.
I have one from the Native American Parent Committee. It was Indigenous Peoples Day last Monday, and Tennessee Western Boy Taylor made an announcement in Dakota on Indigenous Peoples Day. The students also went to the Southeast Tech on Indigenous Peoples Day to listen to Broderick Dressen and Shelley Buck on land acknowledgement and to hear the announcement about scholarships for Indigenous students. And then also Tennessee gave an update about the NASA program, the elections. She is now the chair, and then just kind of the overall feeling being up at the high school. Our students have noted that there is tremendous change that has occurred this year, and a lot of accountability too. And I can speak as a former Indigenous student 25 years ago, I think, that even back then there really hasn't been accountability for discrimination against ethnic students in that building. Our students now feel proud, they feel safe, they feel acknowledged, and they feel heard. So I just want to say thank you to everybody who's listened. They've got a lot of people who are interested in helping
their group. And so things have really changed for our students inside these walls. So they need to be done.
Thank you, Nikki.
Yeah, thank you, Nikki, for reporting that.
Any more school board reports? If not, we'll go on to administrative reports.
Okay, I've got just a few things. I need to push mine. Oh, I didn't think so. Just a couple of things. The first were just business items on there. The EEOC and the MD reports went in. Amy's been working on for some time now, but those are submitted. The third one that's on there is our Inflection. Inflection is our strategic planning group, and they came to town. They've visited with Ann, who's online here, visited all of the schools, went around to each one of the schools. What they were really looking for was just to see the culture and the climate within the schools. So as they traveled through, they would ask questions about what they see, what does it feel like? And looking at the students as they travel, getting a sense of what it looks like and feels like and sounds like within our schools. That was their first step, basically. So they went around to each one of them. I met them out at Burnside and had an opportunity to walk with them through Burnside and show them what Burnside looked like and felt like out inside there. From there, they went to all the rest of the schools. And the following day, then, was Saturday, went down to the art fair. So they were downtown. So they got a sense of the community. We were asking questions about the community. They stayed in our community for the night. So it was a good visit, but just basically first step to begin the whole process. And we're talking about what is it they're going to be involved in next. And that collaborative effort is the next step. So they'll bring us here. This is what we see. And what do you need from us? So if it's a portion of it is the superintendent search or whatever it is that you need, that's that next step. Now they know us, and we have to tell them what we need from them, and what they can offer. Basically, that's sort of the next step that's coming forward. I want to just give you a little bit of that update on Inflection. Yes, Holly.
Were they able to go to Colville and Towerview?
I think they visited every place. Ann, you were with them. Ann traveled with them. Are you still on here, Ann?
I'm still here. We did not go to Towerview because technically that is not a Red Wing program, but they had an absolutely amazing, we kind of bopped back and forth. We went from Burnside to Sunnyside to the high school to community ed to Twin Bluff, and to what I said, oh good, we'll take you to what is the chaos of the middle school lunchroom, and they loved it. It was, for those of you school board members, we'll probably have to do a little newsletter feature on it soon, but Patrick introduced the golden tray. And so the education team was really excited to see how that worked for keeping your, clearing your lunch tables. The kids loved it and they're explaining it to them and all chatting. It was great. And then we had lunch, and then we met with Colville and we gave them a little bit of tour. They saw Memorial Park, Levy, Bay Point, a few other places just to take in kind of some things, that iconic Red Wing things. So it was a very, very good visit, and they took away a lot of things and asked tons and tons of questions. So
Quite the tour.
Mm-hmm. The fourth thing that's on there is our the Minnesota Department of Education came. The commissioner Mueller was here and visited the high school and got a chance to be able to go and see Barry Hand's classroom in action. So if you've read the newsletter, take a peek at the newsletter that's out currently right now, and be able to get a couple of snapshots of them seated within the classroom and talking with the students. You get a sense of the population, basically, because you see the pictures within there of who's being educated in that classroom. Just another highlight, basically, at a state level of what's happening in this district with our world language program inside there. The last one on here is just our Wandering House. So if you drove by the high school recently, the house is out in front, and it's just sort of a nice thing. It's been in two other areas, but it's the students. And from what I saw, we really took advantage of that being here. And what it is your sense of place. So you go into this house and there's questions that are set within this Wandering House, and you go in and it asks you questions. And everybody has what their home feels like. What does it mean to you to be home? What does it feel? What is your place? And then you just spontaneously answer that question, and it's recorded inside this little house. Nobody's there. Nobody's present with you. You say what you want to be able to say, and it gets put together. So Red Wing's story, basically, from the viewpoint of students in the community within, but specifically our students. So I'm really looking forward to hearing that. It'll be online, so you'll be able to go in and what does it mean to our students? What does place mean to them? What does home mean to them? You'll get a sense of that when the project is completed. So just a little bit of a highlight. If you want to come by and give your version of what it means to be home, you're welcome to be able to do that.
Now, it's in the front of the school?
It's right out in front of community, right out in front of the district office entrance. So you can't miss it. This little tiny house is sitting there, painted in bright colors, so you can't really miss it. Jim?
And I'm looking forward, I'm look forward to Mr. Hand's class. I'm gonna go there Wednesday.
Right.
Take it in and take time in to see how that goes. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah. As you should. Yeah. So that's all I have for reports.
Okay, thank you. No more questions, Mr. Norton. We'll go on to the consent agenda. Does anybody want to pull anything from the consent agenda? Discuss anything? If not, I'm looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved. Second.
Ms. Rowe moved it. Ms. Tower seconded it to approve the consent agenda. I have to do a roll call. We'll start with Ms. Tift.
Aye.
Ms. Rowe.
Aye.
Ms. Buck.
Aye.
Ms. Tower.
Aye.
Mr. Bryant.
Aye.
And chair votes aye. All right, next we go to donations and grants. While we're doing that, I just want to thank, we didn't have any retirements or just new hires. We have some resignation. I want to thank those people that have served our district on our way over to the donations and grants. There must be one page too far here. All right, Mr. Norton's supposed to present this.
Yep, I can. The Amazon Smile Foundation gifted $23.64. There was no designated purchase for that. The anonymous donation came in of $100 going to the Sunnyside ILF, and the Dow Endowment Fund gave $10,000 to initiate the Winger After School Program. Wow, so a significant donation.
Can you enlighten us what the Sunnyside ILF is?
I wish I could. Jackie?
Sorry, didn't mean to put you on the spot.
Thanks a lot.
I'll get you the dandelion.
Each of the elementaries has what's called the Innovative Learning Fund. And this is what replaced our old parent advisory committees, where the fundraising dollars go for things like field trips and speakers and things like that. Those little extra above and beyond things that make
So it's
coming
called
to
the
Innovative Learning
And
Fund.
it used to be PTA or
It's,
PTO?
yeah, it's where when the PTOs disbanded, these funds are what was formed.
And do we keep track of those funds?
We do.
Okay, and do we have one for each school?
We have one for each school. So for example, the big Club's Choice fundraisers that just wrapped up at the elementaries, they go into that fundraising money goes into these funds each school.
So those are the donations that came forward. You know, I read that actually prior to the meeting and meant to find out what that was. So
Sure you did.
Innovative Learning Fund. Yeah, and I was like, it's gotta be fun. The F I knew for some reason.
Yeah. No, it's
kind of a tricky one to remember.
Many thanks to the Duff Endowment Fund. They do so much for us.
They do.
Ms. Robertson, I believe, is involved with that also and stuff. thank you very much to all our donations here. So we need a,
Jim, question.
oh, go ahead, Jim.
Thank you. Can you tell us a little bit what the initiate the Winger after school program, has that been started? Or is this something you're gonna be looking at doing?
Developing.
That's fine, thank you.
So
I will make a motion to accept the donations graciously from the three that were just previously stated.
Second?
Moved by Mr. Bryant, seconded by Ms. Tiff to approve donation of the grant for adoption by resolution. Is that all right if I say that? It's not what you said, but whatever way you're right. Okay, well, once again, we'll do that by roll call. We'll start out with Ms. Roll,
Aye.
Ms. Buck,
Aye.
Ms. Tower,
Aye.
Mr. Bryant,
Aye.
Ms. Tiff,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye. All right, next we go to Minnesota State High School League Form A resolution. And Mr. Norton is up again.
So this is a resolution, basically, is our, for to apply basically for Form A. The Minnesota State High School League Foundation was formed to provide Minnesota High School, you can read this through this, so it's really just a governing board. They need to be able to make this resolution, it has to be accepted by the board.
For grants.
For grants. For us to be able to accept grants, you need to act on it.
Make a motion to approve the resolution of governing board supporting application to the Minnesota State High School League Foundation.
I'll second.
Approved, or motion by Mr. Bryant, seconded by Ms. Tower to approve the Minnesota State High School League Foundation grant application. Any more discussion? If not, we'll start by roll call again. Ms. Buck,
Aye.
Ms. Tower,
Aye.
Mr. Bryant,
Aye.
Ms. Stiff,
Aye.
Ms. Roll,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye. Okay, next we got combined polling place resolution. Is Mr. Gerda going to present that, or are we just doing it that really not much?
She's there.
She's here. Hi, Lisa.
Hello, good evening. Can you hear me okay? All right. As you know, each year the district is required to present a resolution to the county in case a special election is called in calendar year 2023. We need to have the combined polling places resolution ready to go. This is the same resolution that you as a board approved last year with one change, and that is the college will not be used for 2023 as a polling location due to construction on site. So we are going with the church, which is the same location the county and the city will be using for their polling places for 2023.
I move to approve the 2023 combined polling place resolution as presented.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Bryant, seconded by Ms. Rowe to approve the combined polling place resolution as presented. Any discussion? If not, I'll go by roll call. Ms. Tower.
Aye.
Mr. Bryant.
Aye.
Ms. Stiff.
Aye.
Ms. Rowe.
Aye.
Ms. Buck.
Aye.
The chair votes aye. That resolution is approved.
Thank you.
Next, we have second reading of Minnesota, or policy 516, student medication.
So this is, it's adopted at the last school board meeting as an emergency, so we are just continuing that down the road now. So that process has begun. Contacted the school nurse, Joni, asked her where we were. She said that it is already in the works. And as you heard from Sherry earlier, adding on, basically going over and making sure that they're included at that level as well, because our kids go to that school. Or travel over to River Bluff.
Okay, unless there's some discussion, it's just an informational thing here. If there's no discussion, we'll move on. I think it's great that we're getting this going for permanent.
Yep.
All right, next will be approved MSBA policy revision for policies 603, 604, 721, 722.
I will make a motion to approve the revisions to policies 603, 604, 721, and 722.
I'll second that.
Motion by Ms. Tiff, seconded by Ms. Tower to approve the revisions, policy 603, 4, 721, 722 as presented. Any discussion? If not, we'll start with roll call. Mr. Bryant?
Aye.
Ms. Tiff?
Aye.
Ms. Rowe?
Aye.
Ms. Buck?
Aye.
Ms. Tower?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. All right. Next, we're going to the benefit plan motion. I'm just gonna get myself paperwork
I have
out
the
of here.
recommendation right here.
I just need to get caught up, but you
Sure,
go
I
ahead.
go back to the beginning for this one. On the
What
health
page?
benefits.
What page?
Oh, I got the page here already tore out.
Okay, I move to approve the Blue Cross Blue Shield as the district health insurance provider for calendar year 2023.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been motioned by Mr. Bryant, seconded by Ms. Tower to approve the Blue Cross Blue Shield as the district's health insurance provider for the calendar year 2023. Do we have any more discussion on this? As we had it presented earlier, no discussion, comments, questions, okay. With that, then we'll go to the vote. We'll start with Ms. Tift,
Aye.
Ms. Rowe,
Aye.
Ms. Buck,
Aye.
Ms. Tower,
Aye.
Mr. Bryant,
Aye.
and I guess I forgot to disclose this, but I will be abstaining. Chair abstains. All right, next we go to upcoming meetings and adjournment, upcoming meetings. I know we wanted to work on coming up with more information on superintendent process, I guess. What are
I
your
almost think
thoughts?
that it needs to be on every agenda for a while. It may be a business item, maybe we don't need to add anything more, but I think to figure out our process, we probably need to do that.
Do we want to do it in a workshop every
Yes,
month,
we're
every
still-
week, or the regular board meeting?
I just feel like maybe every board meeting so that we can.
An update, maybe the chair can do an update under communications.
You want it on a board meeting or you want it in every workshop?
That's what I asked.
Are we
Jim,
ready
that's
for
what Jim
action
asked.
items?
I think
I was thinking.
our
Or in
process
case
worked
we have to
good
vote.
with
you say, Jennifer?
discussion.
I was just thinking at the regular meeting in case we have to vote on something.
That's fine. I just asked, which one do we want to do it at?
Yeah.
I mean, we heard from Mr. Morris, and we have some conversations we should do. Do we want to do it in a workshop to
Yes.
begin with, bring it to the board meeting, or do you want to do it right straight to the board meeting?
I agree with Jennifer to be ready, but I think we need one more good workshop to discuss what we just heard, so we have time to process it and ask clarifying questions. To be ready to come to our next workshop with it and then move on it.
Yes.
So both?
I mean, there was a lot.
Starting with the
to-
workshop.
There's a lot to digest and process in that presentation, and I don't think, I almost wish we would have been able to have some time afterwards to discuss it while it's fresh in our minds too, just to kind of get an idea of where everyone is sitting at.
I'm thinking, to me, and whatever you come up with is fine. I'm just gonna put this off for me as I'm not chair, but I'm here. It seemed to me there's it's a little less formal in a workshop setting. If you have questions, you just ask questions, state what you're thinking and stuff at a workshop. I think it would, personally, I think it would be good to have something here in the next meeting, workshop, talk about it. Maybe we want to keep it on the board as a item also for board. I think there's a lot of stuff to digest, and just talk with each other somewhere. So I'm just putting that out there. You guys tell me what we're doing.
I suggest, I know GCED has got a lot on there, but I think that the superintendent thing should precede all that. So I would recommend that we move the GCE's special education programming to like December 5th, where we just focus on the work, finance focus, truth and taxation at 6. So then we move the superintendent search there, because we heard tonight, which was supposed to be half hour for each, we're over an hour for each. So
Right, they're not small topics.
they're not.
We shouldn't short
they're
them.
not. And,
We should
I
be
don't wanna-
respectful to the enormity of it, what it is.
I want to give them their due diligence. Is that right?
Yes, I also think that if the evaluation is part of this discussion, that needs to be done now. So,
And that should be ahead of time.
Yeah.
And then a meeting, closed meeting, unless Mr. Warren wants to leave it open.
I want us to go over the contract part
yes.
prior to the evaluation. I would like us to look at what did we say for December and what did we say for June, and get that really clear.
Yes.
Because we might have fumbled some things in that, trying to, like you guys said, trying to get it done in a year. We thought we had to get it done within a time frame, so we might not have.
I don't have the contract in front of me. Is this the time you want to talk about?
pulled it out.
No, I don't necessarily want to talk about it now, but I
No.
just think it should be, I think it should be clear.
I guess I thought it was, but.
Well,
I'm just looking at the schedule here, and I know we're usually doing a workshop and a board meeting twice a month. We also have somewhere between November 14th and 18th, a special board meeting to canvass general election. Is anybody up for having another extra meeting to get more work done by having a workshop with that meeting for either GCED or this?
a workshop prior to that board meeting?
Well,
Is that what
that
you're saying?
canvas is just a couple minute deal to
Right,
canvass the
but
election.
you're saying add on a
Does
workshop?
anybody want to have another meeting, or you want to just go with the pace we're going?
I say we just stay with the page we're going on, go on the 5th and see where we're at. If we need to schedule something, we can. With the 5th, the 7th, I mean, excuse me.
7th, we could still
I
at
think he's got her
November
hand up.
7th, go to the 14th to 18th.
I think he's got her hand.
Go ahead, Ms. Buck.
I agree with Board Member Bryant and Board Member Tower. I think we should move GCED special education programming down to December 5th. Put superintendent, like, we need to figure out his contract first and foremost, because I didn't realize there was a conflicting date on there as well. I think that should be taken care of I agree with Craig's recommendations on that before we proceed with anything else. So I agree with Board Member Towers' comment on that.
All right, yeah, December 5th, we really don't have much on there for workshop right now.
So we could do GCD?
Or continue on with superintendent
I
or
think that'd
whatever.
be well, we may want to eventually go right to the board meeting for it too.
Okay, our next meeting is when?
We got 3 weeks now, November 7th.
November 7th, okay.
I guess, as to the contract, I didn't realize there was an issue until tonight. I know there was a question, but I didn't know there was an issue because we negotiated the contract, Pam, right?
Mm-hmm. But it would, for the year?
Well, there was, my recollection was if something, if the board chose to have Mr. Norton in December, the permanent superintendent, then in December or early January, we would then renegotiate the contract to go forward. That's my recollection. Is that what you have in there?
It is not listed in here at all. The duration says this contract is for a period of July 12th, 2022 through June 30th, 23, pending the search for and hiring of a permanent superintendent. This contract shall also terminate at an earlier date in the event a permanent superintendent is hired earlier than June 30th. I see no language in here about December. I think we had talked
Right.
About if, as a board, we had chosen prior to the end of this contract expiring, if we chose to appoint him earlier than July or June 30th, that at that point we would enter in a new negotiation. Right? That's my understanding of what we,
Mr. Norton might have different.
yeah.
Frank, what do you recall?
I think what Mr. Morris was speaking to is because he went back and listened to those as well, those conversations. It's actually what Jim was just talking about. So the date issue and the December issue was that, and part of the conversation was, you will be evaluated in December. Based off of that evaluation, we will decide whether to offer you a new contract or to move forward until June 30th. So the discrepancy is basically you in the language of the conversation, not in the language of the contract, but in the language of the conversation with the negotiators, was that the evaluation would take place, and based off that evaluation, then you would make a determination. And what's happening basically from the standpoint of what I think I'm hearing is that you're determining basically prior to that you may or may not go to posting it. So what supersedes, I guess what I'm trying to say is what supersedes basically is you determining whether or not you want to post that, is that you stated that you would evaluate me prior to that determination whether you would post it. That's what Mr.
I
Black
think
said.
yeah. I think we all agreed we to do our best to evaluate him in December. And we expect, because you want to evaluate him in May, because his contract is June, so we chose December, so.
I think that's the only mix-up is that in December, basically, there was to be an evaluation in December, determining whether or not it would be posted, to put it simply. And that's just your determination whether you posted it or not. That's completely up to you. But I think that's where the discrepancy comes from based off of the statements that were made in the July
board
11th
meeting.
statement.
That's,
Is that where you call?
yeah, it is what I recall.
There's nothing in the contract.
Yeah, no, it feels rushed, much like we acknowledged
Well-
tonight. Like, we did think we had to get something done, but it doesn't feel, after hearing Mr. Morris explain things differently, it doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel like a direction I feel comfortable continuing based on, like he said, it's really hard to evaluate someone after 3 months or 6 months or 5 months based on, and we had you come up with goals, and then it was like, ugh.
All right, our topic is future meetings. I guess the
Yes.
bottom line is, I don't think, because we didn't put it on the agenda to discuss it,
Yes,
to go any further tonight, but I think the importance is that we need to work on this either at the next meeting or sooner, and nobody's saying sooner, so I think November 7th, we're going to put that in a workshop
Superintendent.
and board meeting item both.
Yes.
yes.
That makes sense?
I agree.
We need to vote on it.
So
What are we
November
gonna vote on?
7th,
Well, I feel like we need to have a consensus or something that we agree on. I don't know what we might vote on, but I just want to have the option available to vote on something. If we decide that we want to go with the evaluation a certain way, or if we decide we want to adopt a timeline for superintendent search or whatever it might be. I just think it should be on the agenda in case there's something that comes up that we need to.
How about this? We put it on the workshop, the superintendent, evaluation / contract, evaluation / search, so we don't know which one we're gonna do, and then put it on the agenda, actual superintendent process. So we have an idea of where we're at, where we're going, on the regular board meeting. Would that meet that, your consensus?
I think so. I mean.
I think so. Process could be whatever.
so the board meeting is what again?
I just say put it down as superintendent process. It could be, we may decide to say yay to the
Superintendent
or
process,
search.
I just labeled that.
Right, because we haven't even decided if we're gonna
Right.
even do a search.
Right. Processes,
Right, so.
process covers quite a bit.
Yeah, and I think where we were stuck was we had so many questions about a search and what that looked like, that just kind of was hanging out there. It's no longer hanging out there. We now know which way we could discuss and move.
Right, and in hindsight, I really wish we would have had this kind of a conversation in July. We should have had this in July.
I agree.
You know, I mean, we didn't know what we didn't know, but, because we've never had to hire a superintendent before, but I feel like, you know, we're trying to build a plane as we're flying it, and that's
We're
why it's
asking the
not
pilot
feeling
to
right.
hang one leg out the.
Right.
Hey.
Okay.
And I would just ask for, you know, the interim superintendent's grace on this, because I don't think, you know, our intention has never been to slight you or to make you feel like you're not important or heard or valued to us, because I think that's not at all. I just think we just really don't know what we're doing.
I've actually never felt that.
Oh, good.
Okay, good.
Do not take it that way.
However, I agree with Pam.
I want to
Grace.
work with you and you need to do what is correct. And I heard him speaking as well, and I'm completely on board with that. I'll help the district in any way that I can, whether it's for till June 30th or another year past, whatever it is you need.
I may just add, anytime you have questions or want to meet, don't hesitate. That, you work for us. And we want to be in the loop. We don't want to micromanage, but we want to be in the loop.
What I'm hearing then is for upcoming meetings, to go back to that, we got what's wrote down here. We should probably move the November 7th GCED workshop to December 5th. And then we're going to add to the workshop on November 7th, superintendent evaluation / search. And at the meeting on December 5th, we'll also have an agenda item, superintendent process.
I'm gonna throw out also, I'm open, if the board is open to inviting Mr. Norris to come back and kind of help us talk through the next steps. I don't want us to get to the point where we go, I don't know. So I'm open to inviting him back to the workshop. Not that he has to come in and present or anything, but just be available for a call. I'm open to that. I'm not saying that everybody has to. I just hate to see us get into a situation where we go, well, we'll have to wait till the next workshop and invite him or invite somebody.
Well, and even if you can come on Zoom.
That's what I mean, like
Yeah.
even be part of a Zoom, like, hey, can we call you?
I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, just, he's, you know, really opened our eyes, I feel.
Question. Nikki, can you hear me? On the 17th, we're having the Native American Programming Plan. You know how long that is, or Frank? I think we're at the point now, what I'm saying is we should put superintendent search on every workshop and board meeting till we decide. So I don't want to shortcome that whatever's on the workshop, but if we add that to it, if we add 10, 15 minutes of conversation with that, would you have enough time for that, do you know?
That's Martina.
Yeah, that is Martina. I have no idea what she has in store.
Okay, I just was asking, maybe you knew, that's why. Thank you.
5 to 10. 5 to 10 minutes. So
Let's
it's
go.
simply a presentation of the application she submitted and then what it means to the district.
Just keeping us in the loop of the next,
Correct.
of what she's doing, that's awesome.
Yep, that's it. Sorry to put you on the spot, Nikki. So I suggest we also add it on the 17th.
21st, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
I can't remember what month I'm in here.
We're going to add superintendent on the 21st? or-
Yes, with after the first thing on. I think we just put it on there till we.
It's kind of like that.
Well, that's on the board
Yeah, we
meeting
always
itself
have
or
that.
the workshop?
I do it on the workshop and board meeting every time for going forward.
We can always just.
The workshop doesn't, if there's nothing there, we can always pull it.
Mhm.
Workshop
And
and board meeting. going forward.
Maybe it doesn't need a whole agenda item. It could go under school board reports or whatever, and, you know, even if there's nothing to report, at least, the chair can update the public on where we're at in our search or, you know, the decisions that we can come up with or whatever.
We may have questions from the next meeting. It's good.
I guess as far as Mr. Morris being there, it's good to have the resource on one end, but if do we need him here for us to just talk things out on the first one?
I think he had asked, he said as a board, you need to figure some stuff out. That's what I picked up.
So,
I think you're right, having available maybe a phone or.
Yeah, not,
but I
that's
don't-
what
I
I'm
don't
saying,
want-
not,
I don't think you
no,
need to participate.
or do a PowerPoint, but if there's a legal question or if there's a question about best practice or,
can't get
you know, we
legal
don't,
advice.
he can steer us in the direction of, this is what superintendent searches have looked like, this is what they haven't looked like, this is, you know, those kinds of questions. Not legal advice, but if there's a question that could get us.
Okay.
Would you like me to reach out to him?
I think we should work through the agenda committee.
Okay, sounds good. You guys got it. All right.
Does that cover our upcoming meetings?
Yep.
I don't like it, but I'm the board chair and we get late all the time.
There's a lot. We haven't had an 8:30 meeting in ages.
I know, you won't have to worry about me after 2 more months. So I guess that was the last thing on the agenda here is upcoming meetings, future topics. First, I'm gonna ask, does anybody else have anything they want to say? Otherwise, I'm open for a motion to adjourn. Anybody got anything to say? Because we can't debate it once. we
Motion
have
to adjourn, I move to adjourn.
Second. Oh.
Moved by Mr. Bryan, seconded by Ms. Tiff to adjourn. We'll do it by roll call. And we'll start with Ms. Rowe,
Yes.
Ms. Buck,
Yes.
Ms. Tower,
Yes.
Mr. Bryan,
Aye.
Ms. Tiff.
Aye.
Did I do Ms. Rowe?
Yep.
Yeah, I
You
did.
said yes.
Oh, I put the X too early, and then the chair votes aye. We are adjourned.
Thank you.
For the record, I was one of the people from the public that went to.
Oh,
the,
thank you.
On, was it, what, Wednesday last week?
Why don't you come here?